Chapter 1333. Jia Su was completely convinced by Bai Xiaowen. Both times, he had failed to surpass Bai Xiaowen. This was due to his awe in terms of intelligence. He did not care about Jia Su's thoughts and gave him an important task at a critical moment. This was his magnanimity. Zhang Xiu asked, if the Duke of Yan wants to use you, he only needs to send an edict. Is there a deeper meaning behind this sword? Jia Su said, there are 2 reasons. First of all, I was originally a fugitive, but I suddenly became an important minister under Duke Yan's command. I must have Duke Yan's token. Zhang Liao and Su Huang, 2 generals, were Duke Chao's former subordinates. They recognized this Etienne sword. Secondly, most of the generals in Hefei are old subordinates of the Duke of Yan. I'm a new general, so it's inevitable that some people will not be convinced. Zhang Xiu understood and nodded. That's why the Duke of Yan wants you to hold this sword. It's like holding a battle axe. Jia Su said, with this sword, it's like borrowing the might of the Duke of Yan. No one dares to be unconvinced. The Duke of Yan thinks far and wide, so I have to admit that I'm impressed. Zhang Xiu suddenly laughed. The Duke of Yan has not seen you personally and has not verified your loyalty. Isn't it a little too rash to entrust such an important task to you? If you want to join Dong Yuwu, wouldn't that be bad? Jia Su laughed. General, you don't understand the Duke of Yan, but don't you understand me? From what I've seen, the Duke of Yan, Cao Cao, and I are the same type of people. Although the Duke of Yan has entrusted me with the sword, I'm sure there will be a backup plan. General, why do you think that female General Qiao, as a trusted aide of the Duke of Yan, came to Hefei with him? Zhang Xiu was enlightened and nodded. Bai Xiaowen still ordered Zhang He to stand guard in Nanjing. In addition, he sent more scouts to Chuanzhong to scout for information. He himself spent his days reading the heavenly book. Li Shi and the other teammates felt uneasy after listening to Bai Xiaowen's arrangement in the box. Li Shi said, Jia Su is not a loyal minister. Is it appropriate for you to give him the power of Hefei? Bai Xiaowen smiled and said, Jia Su is not loyal to anyone. He only wants to protect himself. However, he still had a bottom line. For example, when he was following Zhang Xiu, he had once rejected Cao Cao's recruitment, saying that Zhang Xiu listened to his advice and could not bear to abandon him. Taking a step back, even if he doesn't have this bottom line, I can still use him in the Battle of Hefei without worry. After pausing for a moment, Bai Xiaowen explained. First, I defeated Ma Chao, and then I defeated Zhan Lu. These 2 battles have allowed Jia Su to see my strategy clearly. In addition, I have already occupied the Central Plains, and my forces are the strongest in the world. With Jia Su's character of protecting himself, he can only choose my camp. He will not abandon his position and seek refuge with Sun Wu. This time, I sent Sister Qiao with me mainly to check if there are any awakened spies in Hefei. After all, we are facing Sun Su of Jiangdong, and he has top-level awakened under his command. Just in case, I also gave Sister Qiao a handwritten edict. If Jia Su is really unreliable, it will be enough to counterattack. Suddenly, Bai Xiaowen received a notification from the spiritual realm. Absolute Strategy Poison Warrior Jia Su has chosen you as the sovereign assistant. Jia Su's special skill, Absolute Strategy, has taken effect. Absolute Strategy, passive. When using strategies of alienation, bribery, sneak attack, or ambush, the success rate is increased by 25%. When the above strategy is successful, the chance of capturing, killing, the enemy leader is increased by an additional 25%. This effect will only take effect when Jia Su's loyalty is higher than 80 points. After receiving this message, Bai Xiaowen shook his head and shared the information with his teammates. Li Shi said, Jia Su is a rare leader. I thought it would be a lord like Sun Yu. What does this increase the success rate of the strategy mean? Bai Xiaowen said, there are 2 ways to understand it. First, it's purely a lucky increase in the success rate. For example, we used an ambush and the enemy's scouts didn't detect it. Second, it's the intelligence reduction halo. When using these tricks on the enemy, the enemy's IQ will automatically decrease by 25%. Li Shi shook his head and said, the second possibility is too ridiculous. I prefer the first one. Bai Xiaowen said with a smile, no matter which one it is, Jia Su's bonus is enough. It's much more practical than adding a few points to my attributes. Sowing discord, bribing, sneak attack, ambush, these were all commonly used tactics of surprise troops, which happened to complement Sun Yu's wonderful strategy. Bai Xiaowen was now the Duke of Yan, and there were fewer and fewer opportunities for him to personally fight on the battlefield. Adding a few points to his attributes was not as reliable as increasing his charm, luck, and success rate of the strategy. It was normal that Jia Su was not a lord. It was mainly because of his popularity. On the other hand, Jia Su was not a king's strategist. He walked the crooked path, so his evaluation in the spirit realm's 3 kingdoms was definitely lower than Sun Yu's. Bai Xiaowen suddenly slapped the table and said, that's not right. Zhang Xiu should have just left Wuguan and is far from Hefei. Jia Su is loyal to me now, so he definitely didn't listen to my orders and open the box in advance. This son of a bitch. Li Shi said. Come on. Bai Xiaowen smiled and said, we don't have anything else to do for the time being. Why don't we go back to our old job as Awakened and sneak into Sichuan to witness the battle between Liu Bei and Liu Bei? It's also good to recognize the generals under Liu Bei. Otherwise, we won't be able to find the geographical map in the future. In fact, Bai Xiaowen had already met Liu Bei, Guan Yu, Zhang Fei, and Zhao Yun. However, he had not met Pang Tong and the newly recruited Huang Zhong and Wei Yan. Okay, I'll go with you, Li Shi said. Cecilia and Han Su were also a little tempted, but they were ruthlessly rejected. The reason was simple. Bai Xiaowen still needed the 2 of them to cover their tracks so that Zhang He would not find out that the Duke of Yan was missing. That would be troublesome. If there was any military intelligence, they could report it to Cecilia first and contact her through Raven Messenger. After Liu Bei took Fushui Pass, he went straight into Luochang and aimed his army at Luochang. After Liu Bei and the other generals had a discussion, they decided to leave Liu Bei and Zhang Ren to defend the city while Ling Bao and Deng Xian led their troops forward. They each set up a barracks and formed a corner around each other to stop Liu Bei. Huang Zhong and Wei Yan were eager to make a contribution, so they almost went all out. Therefore, Liu Bei sent the 2 generals to lead an army and attack the 2 barracks. Although there were some twists and turns in the process, the final result was that they took the 2 barracks, killed Deng Xian, and captured Ling Bao alive. Bai Xiaowen and Li Shi witnessed the entire process with their own eyes. Unfortunately, the 2 of them did not have the chance to sneak attack Huang Zhong and Wei Yan. These 2 Lord-class generals were very resistant to attacks, not to mention their trusted subordinates and subordinates. Liu Bei was used to using benevolent methods. He immediately ordered Ling Bao to release her and then advanced towards Luochang. Chapter 1334. In the Romance of the 3 Kingdoms, after Ling Bao was released, he wanted to dig up the Fu River and drown Liu Bei's vanguard, which was Huang Zhong and Wei Yan's troops. However, it was early spring and the Fu River was not as turbulent as it was in the Romance of the 3 Kingdoms. Naturally, this strategy of drowning the vanguard would not work. Misfortune was a blessing in disguise. Ling Bao did not have the opportunity to perform meritorious deeds, but he managed to keep his life. In the Romance of the 3 Kingdoms, he volunteered to dig up the Fu River. However, Liu Bei's troops were prepared and sent Huang Zhong and Wei Yan to patrol the area. Then, they captured Ling Bao again and beheaded him this time. There were 2 paths from Ling Bao and Deng Xian's camp to Luochang. One was the main road and the other was the small road. Liu Bei led his troops to the main road with Huang Zhong as the vanguard and approached Luochang's east gate. Military advisor Pang Tong took the small road with Wei Yan as the vanguard and approached Luochang's west gate. Liu Bei said to Pang Tong, "I've been feeling uneasy recently. Last night, I dreamed of a deity who hit my arm with an iron rod. Why don't I switch with military advisor? I'll take the small road and military advisor will take the main road." Pang Tong smiled and said, "There will definitely be enemies blocking the main road. Huang Zhong will be the vanguard and Generals Guan and Zhao will provide support. I'll take the small road secretly. Pang Tong laughed and coughed violently. Liu Bei sighed and said, military advisor has been with me for less than half a year. Yet, his hair has turned gray and he coughs incessantly. Is it because the heavens are jealous of his talent? Pang Tong's coughing was almost done. He smiled and said, don't worry, my lord. It's just a small cough. It's not worth mentioning. Taking Luochang is more important. Liu Bei thought for a while and said, I have second brother with me. We can deal with the enemies on the main road. Zilong will follow military advisor. We must protect military advisor. Zhao Yun agreed. Liu Bei split his troops. Bai Xiaowen and Li Shi were already crouching on the small road, waiting for the legendary scene. This place is called Luofeng Slope. In the Romance of the Three Kingdoms, it's the place where Pang Tong died. Bai Xiaowen laughed and said, if Pang Tong dies, it will be greatly beneficial to us. Looking at this person's performance in the Romance of the Three Kingdoms, it could be said that he did not live up to his name. But he was lucky. He was packaged and sold by Sima Hui and tied to Zhuge Liang. Crouching Dragon and Fledgling Phoenix. Obtaining one of these two would bring peace to the world. Sima Hui, this old brat, what big words. However, this also led to Pang Tong's popularity being high. After all, he was a phoenix chick. In the Three Kingdoms of the Spirit Realm, if we don't talk about history and only talk about fame, he should be a lord-level strategist. Li Shi rubbed his palms together. Pang Tong was ambushed. If he doesn't die, I'll jump over and finish him off. Bai Xiaowen nodded and suddenly shushed her softly, be careful. There are troops coming from Luo City. They should be Zhang Ren's ambush. Bai Xiaowen now had lord-level precedence and almost 130 points of intelligence. He could basically be considered a lord-level lord-type monster. He used his spiritual power to shield himself and Li Shi, so they wouldn't be exposed. Seeing Zhang Ren from afar, Bai Xiaowen used insight. Zhang Ren was also a rare commander-level general. His special skill was volley shooting. Volley shooting, passive. Your direct subordinate's long-range attack power plus 25%. Activating volley shooting can increase the accuracy of your direct subordinate's long-range attacks by 25% and obtain the heart-piercing effect for 30 seconds. Heart-piercing, passive. You and your direct subordinate's long-range attacks will cause additional true damage to the target, based on level and template. Bai Xiaowen rubbed his chin. GG, with this skill, Pang Tong's death wasn't in vain. Zhang Ren's ambush was set. After waiting for about 4 hours, a troop of troops came from the small path in the direction of Fushui Pass. The person in the lead was 8 feet tall. His face was red and he held a long saber in his hand. He looked majestic. Bai Xiaowen said softly in the team channel, this person must be Wei Yan. If Zhang Ren has a plan, he'll let him pass and then kill the generals behind him. That way, Wei Yan won't have anyone to help him and will panic. Li Shi said, this Wei Yan also has the aura of a lord, but he's weaker than Pang Da. The two of them looked on quietly. As expected, Zhang Ren didn't set up an ambush and let Wei Yan pass through the small path. Not long after, Pang Tong led a troop of troops and slowly arrived. Li Shi's eyesight was good. He saw them from afar and said, why does Pang Tong look like he's half dead? Is he sick? Bai Xiaowen used insight and squinted his eyes. He's not sick. He's suffering from a backlash. It's the same as the backlash effect on Zhang Jiao, but the effect is different. The backlash that Zhang Jiao received was true damage. Every time he received it, he would lose 300 HP. On the other hand, Pang Tong's backlash was dizziness, hallucinations, coughing, and the temporary loss of his lord rank skills. For Pang Tong, who was a scholar and relied on his brain, this backlash was even more severe than Zhang Jiao's. He's suffering from a backlash. Could it be? Li Shi thought of a possibility. Bai Xiaowen nodded. It seems that he's the one who cursed Ma Teng. It seems that the cost of using the praying mirror technique to curse people is very high. Ma Teng is just a rare rank leader. Pang Tong used the praying mirror technique as a lord rank to curse him, but he ended up in this state. Li Shi said, serves him right. Bai Xiaowen smiled and didn't say anything. However, behind Pang Tong, Bai Xiaowen saw another white-robed and silver-armored general. He was shocked. I didn't expect Zhao Yun to be here too. Li Shi opened his mouth. This. Can Pang Tong still be shot to death? If he doesn't die, will I have to fight Zhao Yun one-on-one? Bai Xiaowen shook his head and smiled bitterly. Forget it. If Pang Tong doesn't die, he'll be lucky. Let's not make a move this time if we can. Just watch the show. Li Shi muttered, in this kind of terrain, I might be able to defeat Zhao Yun. At least I can run away. Bai Xiaowen shook his head. We're going deep into Sichuan to get first-hand information. If we're exposed, it'll cause a chain reaction. The consequences will be severe. Pang Tong led the army to Luofeng Slope. When they were about to reach Shan Renjuan's ambush area, they saw the lush forest around them. Confused, they quickly stopped the army and asked, "What is this place?" A soldier replied, "This is Luofeng Slope." Pang Tong's dizzy mind suddenly cleared up. He said hurriedly, "My Taoist name is Young Phoenix. This is not a good place for me. Retreat." Zhang Renjun saw that something was wrong and unfurled his red flag. The thousands of archers under his command stood up and fired arrows at Pang Tong. Zhao Yun was shocked. "Military advisor, be careful." He leaped over a few soldiers and came to Pang Tong's side. His silver spear danced like blooming pear blossoms as he deflected the arrows. However, Pang Tong had already taken a few arrows and fell off his horse. The soldiers around him quickly rescued him. Chapter 1335. Bai Xiaowen stared at Pang Tong's HP bar. Normally, he would only be able to see the HP bar when he was in combat with the enemy. However, Bai Xiaowen had the Eye of Evolution, so he was different from other awakened ones. He saw that Pang Tong's HP bar was divided into two sections, one red and the other gray. Both showed 300 points. The red HP bar at the front was probably Pang Tong's maximum HP. The gray HP bar at the back was probably a shield or an extra HP. It jumped with Pang Tong's coughs and was not fixed. Don't think that Pang Tong's HP was low. He had the special skill Literary Scholar. When he entered battle mode, his stats would be reduced to 1/5 of their normal stats. 300 HP was not considered low. When the arrows were fired, Pang Tong's red HP bar was emptied first. Bai Xiaowen smiled and said, "Pang Tong is dead." Li Shi saw that Pang Tong had been rescued by the soldiers and was still waving his hand to order the soldiers to retreat. He was puzzled and said, "He can still move. He shouldn't be dead." Bai Xiaowen shook his head and said, "Pang Tong's HP bar has been emptied. He's hanging on by the gray HP bar. The gray HP bar is constantly falling. For example, it's like a wuxia master who suffered a fatal injury and relied on his internal energy to stay alive. He could only live for a few more days. Looking at the speed of the gray health bar dropping, I'm afraid he won't even last a day." Li Shi calmed down and watched the battle. At this time, half of the Jing province army had been killed. Because the road was narrow, it was difficult to change formations. They wanted to retreat but they were blocked by each other. Zhao Yun waved his silver spear and covered a radius of 10 feet to protect himself and the heavily injured Pang Tong. Although there were many arrows, none of them were able to hit their target. They were all blocked. Bai Xiaowen smiled and said, "Zhao Yun's martial arts skills are at the pinnacle of the three kingdoms. Can you do such an impenetrable spear technique?" Li Shi shook his head and had a look of admiration on his face. "I can only take care of myself. However, I can't take care of Pang Tong and his subordinates like Zhao Yun. Ah, he's amazing. It's a pity that we're on the opposite side." Bai Xiaowen said indifferently, "There's nothing to pity." Bai Xiaowen used insight on Zhao Yun. He discovered that Zhao Yun was currently a level 9 lord, and his combat skills were all question marks. He could only see his basic attributes and lord skills. Strength 91 plus 4, Dexterity 120 plus 30, Vitality 80 plus 16, Spirit 53. Lord skill, Dragon Guts, passive. When Zhao Yun enters battle mode, strength, agility, and vitality will be increased. The maximum bonus for each attribute is 30 points. The total bonus for all 3 attributes is 60 points. When my lord and his descendants are in danger, if Zhao Yun is on the same battlefield, he will enter the Save the Lord state. Single Rider Saves Master. Zhao Yun has received Pegasus, Blitz, Accuracy, and Body Hardening bonuses. Pegasus, riding speed increases by 30%, and will not be negatively affected by 2-person riding. Terrain obstacles are ignored. Thunderbolt, attack speed increased by 30%, unaffected by any attack speed reduction. Accuracy, increase critical hit rate by 30%, critical hit damage is doubled. Hardened Body, greatly reduces the stiffness of attacks and injuries. Gains an additional 30% toughness. By Xiaowen side. There was no need to mention the lords and his family. However, after Lu Bu's death, Zhao Yun could be considered as the #1 general in the 3 kingdoms. After all, he was 1 Lu, 2 Zhao, and 3 Jian Wei. It was not strange for him to have such attributes and skills. This also reminded Bai Xiaowen. In the future, when fighting against Liu Bei, before Zhao Yun was captured, he must not force Liu Bei into a dead end. Oh right, there was also Student Ado. These were all switches. Once my lord, descendant, is in danger, the Single Rider Saves Master state will be triggered, and Zhao Yun will instantly transform into a Super Saiyan. With a greatly increased attack speed and critical hit, coupled with Zhao Yun's exquisite marksmanship, how much damage could it cause? It was much more terrifying than Student Gaolan's sword strike. Bai Xiaowen remembered that in the Romance of the 3 Kingdoms, when Student Gaolan was chasing after Liu Bei, he was instantly killed by Zhao Yun's spear. Disregarding the Single Rider Saves Master state, just the Dragon's Bile's passive had a total of 60 attribute points, which was already very terrifying. Moreover, these 60 attribute points were agility bonuses, and a maximum of 30 points could be added to a single attribute. This also ensured that Zhao Yun would not be at a disadvantage when fighting against the violent generals of the 3 kingdoms. Currently, Zhao Yun did not trigger the Single Rider Saves Master state, but the Dragon's Bile's passive was still triggered. After adding 30 points to agility, it reached 150 points. No wonder he could easily deflect the arrows and still take care of Pang Tong. Zhao Yun saw that the situation was critical and did not care about the soldiers. He apologized and dragged Pang Tong over, placing him in front of his horse. With one hand holding down Pang Tong and the other brandishing his spear to deflect the arrows, he charged forward. The reason why he chose to charge forward and not retreat was because Zhao Yun was brave and resourceful. Behind him were his own soldiers, blocking his path. If he retreated, he would not be able to move quickly. In front of him, there were only a dozen or so outpost soldiers. After passing them, he could continue forward. As Zhao Yun charged forward, the dozen or so outpost soldiers dodged one after another. Some of them could not dodge in time, but Zhao Yun still had the time to use his spear to deflect them or grab their belts and throw them away. When Zhang Ren saw Zhao Yun wielding his spear with one hand, the arrows could not even get close to him. He was shocked. Liu Bei's army actually has such a skilled general. If we were to fight him head-on, how would we deal with him? We must kill him and not let him escape. Zhang Ren waved his command flag and the archers all aimed at Zhao Yun. However, the 30 seconds of Zhang Ren's volley shooting skill had already passed, and the accuracy of the soldiers' attacks had decreased. Zhao Yun roused his spirit and blocked all of the incoming arrows. Not a single arrow hit his body as he continued to advance. When Zhang Ren and his soldiers saw this, their faces were filled with fear as if they had seen a ghost. At the same time, Wei Yan, who was at the front, also received news that the rear was ambushed. He wanted to turn back to help, but at the two sides of the mountain ridge, the archers that Zhang Ren had hidden in advance had already occupied the high ground and shot out arrows. Wei Yan was terrified, and he could not turn back. He could only lead his troops forward, heading straight for the west gate of Luo City. He wanted to meet up with Liu Bei's main force there. However, Luo City's guard general Wu Lan and Lei Tong charged over and blocked Wei Yan's path, causing him to be unable to advance or retreat. Wei Yan could not retreat and could only fight to the death. However, he was still unable to get away, and he had lost half of his soldiers. Just at this moment, he heard shouts from the front. It was Huang Zhong, who had received orders from Liu Bei to assist. Behind him was Zhao Yun, who was carrying Pang Tong and braving the arrow rain as he charged over. Wu Lan and Lei Tong were both forced back. Huang Zhong, Zhao Yun, and Wei Yan brought the remaining soldiers to escort Pang Tong all the way to Luo City. Chapter 1336. After that, another chaotic battle ensued. Luoqing's general Lu Gu charged out to intercept Huang Zhong, Zhao Yun, and the others. However, he was received by Liu Bei and Guan Yu and had to flee back to their stronghold. Zhang Ren, on the other hand, rushed out from a small path and led his victorious troops to fight another battle. Liu Bei's army was ambushed and their morale was low. Originally, they couldn't hold on. Fortunately, Guan Yu, Zhao Yun, Huang Zhong, and the other generals were strong. They personally brought up the rear and scattered the pursuers. Only then did Liu Bei safely return to his stronghold. Before Liu Bei could catch his breath, he saw that Pang Tong had been shot by 3 arrows. He was so anxious that tears flowed down his face. He hurriedly ordered the medical officer to treat him. Pang Tong coughed and said, "My lord, there's no need to make things difficult for the medical officer. Today's tribulation is the will of the heavens. It's retribution for using the art of praying to harm others for personal gain." Liu Bei was puzzled. "Why do you say that?" He waved his hand and ordered his subordinates to leave. Pang Tong said, "My lord, do you know how Ma Ting of Shiliang died?" Liu Bei said, "There's no conclusion to this case. Some people say that it was Zhang Lu of Hanzhong, while others say that it was Yuan Shi of Hebei who used the art of Taoism to curse Ma Ting to death." Pang Tong shook his head. "I did it." Liu Bei was shocked. "Why did you do that?" Pang Tong sighed. "My lord, I was invited by Kong Ming to assist you. I wanted to help you rise in this chaotic world. However, I didn't expect the situation to change so quickly. Before we could gain a foothold in Jingzhou, Yuan Shi had already destroyed Cao Cao and unified the Central Plains. If we didn't do anything, Yuan Shi would have had time to reorganize his internal affairs. After he consolidated the north, he would have gone south to Jingzhou and unified the world. Our Lord's great ambition and our wisdom will be of no use. Therefore, I used Ma Ting's injury as an opportunity to pray to the stars. Through 2 curses, Ma Ting will die in Yadu. At the same time, Su Shu will go to Hanzhong under an alias to persuade Zhang Lu to give up on the 3rd assistant. Jian Yong will secretly go to Shiliang and put the blame on Yuan Shi. Then Ma Chao will send troops to the Central Plains to buy us some precious time." Liu Bei was displeased. He said, "Junqi's action is against the harmony of heaven and earth, it is not the action of a gentleman." Pang Tong coughed repeatedly and said apologetically, "It was indeed this subject who made the decision without permission. My lord, you are a benevolent and virtuous lord, you cannot bear this stain. But if no one does this, Yuan Shi will really unify the world." Liu Bei asked, "Does Kong Ming know about this?" Pang Tong shook his head slowly. Regardless of whether it is planning or commanding troops, Kong Ming is always cautious and prudent. He can be called a strategist of the king. He definitely won't agree to such a risky plan, so I can only do it. I didn't tell Kong Ming in advance, but with his intelligence, he should be able to guess a few clues based on the subsequent development of the matter." Liu Bei sighed and said, "Junshi did this for me. Although I didn't know about it, it is no different from me doing it myself. Don't say too much, Junshi. Recuperate well, there will be plenty of time in the future." Then he blamed Zhao Yun. "What did I arrange for you to do?" you must ensure Junqi's safety. But now, Zhao Yun could only kneel on one knee and bow his head to beg for forgiveness. He said, Junqi's injury is due to my lack of protection. If my lord wants to punish me, Yunjue will have no objections. Pang Tong shook his head. My lord, I don't have a future. The art of praying is originally a technique of seizing the good fortune of heaven. It borrows good fortune from heaven for one's own personal benefit. The more one takes, the heavier the backlash. Moreover, borrowing the good fortune of heaven and earth to harm others will greatly reduce one's lifespan. After Ma Ting's death, I often couldn't sleep at night. The phantom of the vengeful spirit always appeared in front of my eyes. Even if I didn't get injured by the arrow today, I wouldn't live for more than 10 years at most. Moreover, the falling phoenix slope that we encountered today is a predestined tribulation. It is unavoidable. My lord, please don't blame General Zilong for this. He has already done his best. After pausing for a moment, Pang Tong began to make arrangements for his death. My lord, Yi Province is a foundation that our army must seize. Even if it is extremely difficult and dangerous, we cannot give it up. Luocheng is not difficult to take now. My lord, you only need to do this and you will be able to take it. However, I won't be able to help you in the subsequent attacks on Mianzhu and Chengdu. However, Su Shu's talent is not inferior to mine. My lord, you can use him as your military advisor to continue your great undertaking. Pang Tong whispered the plan into Liu Bei's ear. Liu Bei's eyes were filled with tears. He nodded and said, I will remember your words from the bottom of your heart. Pang Tong continued, Liu Zhang will not sit still and wait for death. He will definitely collude with the Yuan army to cut off our path of retreat. Jiaoming Pass and Fushui Pass are our last paths of retreat. My lord, you must send generals to guard them. Liu Bei nodded again and again. Pang Tong's bean-sized eyes stared at the sky as if he had seen an illusion before his death. He raised his hand with difficulty and groped in the air. In the end, his hand fell to the ground. Young Phoenix Pang Tong had fallen. Liu Bei burst into tears. Zhao Yun's eyes were also filled with tears. His face was filled with guilt and self-blame. The soldiers of the other 3 armies also lowered their heads and did not speak. Brother, please restrain your grief. Now that your military advisor has unfortunately died, we cannot stop our plan of reclaiming Yi Province. Should we go to Jingzhou and invite Zhuge over? The only person who could persuade Liu Bei was Guan Yu. Liu Bei wiped away his tears and said, Zhuge is guarding the 5 prefectures of Jingzhou against Sun Su and Yuan Shi. Don't worry. Before Pang Tong died, he had already planned to destroy Luocheng. Liu Bei told Su Shu about Pang Tong's final plan. Su Shu nodded and said, Xiuan's final plan is highly feasible. My lord, you can do it. After Pang Tong died, Liu Bei's army mourned and sent out news that they would retreat back to Fushui Pass. When the generals of Luocheng heard this, they discussed, if Liu Bei returns to Fushui Pass and builds morale, it won't be easy to stop him. Why don't we take advantage of the fact that they want to return and rob them? If we can kill Liu Bei, we will have nothing to worry about. That night, the generals of Luocheng each led an army and headed toward Liu Bei's camp. After Bai Xiaowen found out, he brought Li Shi back to Hanzhong. Are we not going to watch? Li Shi asked. Bai Xiaowen shook his head, there is no need. The generals of Luocheng underestimated the enemy after a small victory and forgot about how terrifying Liu Bei's army is. In this battle, Luocheng will definitely fall. Next, Liu Bei's army will be able to target Mianzhu and threaten Chengdu. It is time for our army to enter the battlefield. We can't drag this out any longer. As expected, right after Bai Xiaowen brought Li Shi back to Nanjing, Luocheng's battle report was sent over by the scouts. After Liu Bei lured the Luocheng army out, Liu Bei sent Guan Yu to attack Luocheng and kill the defending general, Lu Gu. As for Ling Bao, Zhang Ren, and Wu Yi, they fell into an ambush. Zhao Yun, Huang Zhong, and Wei Yin charged out and killed Ling Bao. Zhang Ren and Wu Yi were captured. In the end, Wu Yi surrendered and Zhang Ren was killed by Liu Bei's army. Luocheng fell into Liu Bei's hands. Bai Xiaowen's army also moved out from Nanjing and went through Bajong to Jiaming Pass, officially joining the battle for Sichuan. Chapter 1337. This time, Bai Xiaowen did not want to raise his own banner and lead the army in the open. Instead, he wanted to use Ma Chao's name to attack Jiaming Pass. In Hefei, Jia Su openly used the banner of the Duke of Yan. This caused Sun Ce's army to be suspicious and not dare to act rashly. Furthermore, when Liu Bei's army saw that the Yuan army only sent Ma Chao, they would lower their guard. The defending general of Jiaming Pass was called Huijun. Ma Chao fought in front of the pass while Huijun held his ground. Huijun ordered the army to attack the pass. Huijun's defense was tight, and he did not give the Yuan army any chance to attack. On the first day of the siege, they did not succeed. Instead, there were many corpses of the Yuan army. Li Shi tried to assassinate Huijun, but he was stopped by Huijun's guards. If not for his cloud boots, he would have been killed. This Huijun is just a normal commander. Why is he so hard to deal with? Li Shi said. Bai Xiaowen frowned and said, Huijun is not famous in the romance of the Three Kingdoms. However, in history, he is a good general who is used to defending the city. He is not worse than Cao Ren. The Three Kingdoms dimension had only slightly weakened his attributes, but it had not weakened his ability to command and defend the city, which were outside of his attributes panel. It seems like Liu Bei knows how to make good use of people. How are we going to take down this pass? Li Shi was good at finding the essence of things. Bai Xiaowen said, tomorrow, I will participate in the siege. Ah. Aren't you going to hide behind the scenes? Li Shi asked. Bai Xiaowen said, if I don't use the banner of the Duke of Yan, the natives of Liu Bei's army will not think that it is me. My large area of effect deterrence should be very useful in such a situation. The next day, the Yuan army attacked the pass again. They fired the stone cannons and raised the scaling ladders. Countless soldiers ran over and climbed up the scaling ladders like ants. At the gates, Huijun ordered his soldiers to pour out kerosene and ignite the scaling ladders. At the same time, he shot arrows at the Yuan army from above, killing them. Bai Xiaowen stood in the shadows with his hands slightly spread out. A large-scale deterrence. Huijun froze for a few seconds. As for the soldiers guarding the pass, they were turned into clay sculptures. Li Shi activated his cloud-treading boots, soaring into the air and riding the wind. By the time Huijun came to his senses, Li Shi had already rushed to the gate and pointed his sword at Huijun. Huijun shouted, "Hey!" A transparent ripple spread out. Huijun's shout had stimulated the personal guards who were in a state of deterrence, allowing them to break free from the continuous control of the mental energy field. Bai Xiaowen frowned. Deterrence was still a low priority. If it was a 3-star skill, coupled with Bai Xiaowen's 5-point base priority, Huijun would have no way of getting rid of the control. Li Shi ran away at a faster speed than when she came. What a joke! If he was surrounded by Huijun's elite personal guards, he wouldn't be able to escape. Huijun ordered his command flag to be waved. The first batch of tired soldiers retreated, and the backup troops rushed forward. Arrows were fired again. Rolling logs and stones fell. The Yuan army was in a mess. Bai Xiaowen looked at Huijun, who was hiding behind the city gate tower, and sighed. Huijun was very self-aware of his status as an ordinary leader. He only stayed behind the city gate tower and waved his command flag remotely. Bai Xiaowen didn't even have the chance to throw out a talisman, let alone a sneak attack. On the second day of battle, the Yuan army suffered more than 1,000 casualties, while Huijun's army only suffered about 300 casualties. White Phoenix's allies were a little anxious. Bai Xiaowen comforted them. Don't worry. This is normal in a war between the 3 countries. We won the previous battles too quickly and smoothly. We defeated Cao Cao in half a month and defeated Ma Chao in 10 days. This is abnormal. What should we do now? Cecilia asked. Continue to attack. Keep the pressure up. Bai Xiaowen said, Hu Jun may have caused some trouble for me, but he doesn't have enough soldiers. The willpower of the elite captains under his command was also weakening. When I find an opportunity, I'll steal one of them as a spy. Then we can easily break through. Liu Bei's army entered Luocheng and was discussing the next step to take Mianzhu. Suddenly, they received an urgent report from Hu Jun at Jiaming Pass. When they heard that the Yuan army was attacking Jiaming Pass, Liu Bei's upper echelons were shocked. Later, when they heard that Ma Chao was the one who broke through the pass and Yuan Shi's banner appeared in Hefei, which was thousands of miles away, Liu Bei's upper echelons finally calmed down. Liu Bei's army rejoiced that they had formed a strategic alliance with Sun Tzu. Sun Tzu's attack on Hefei had forced Yuan Shi to focus on Sichuan. This was a great advantage for their side. Liu Bei said, Ma Chao is one of the strongest generals in the world. Yuan Shi's army has the advantage in numbers. Hu Jun can defend for a while, but he can't defend for a long time. Before Pang Tong died, he said that Jiaming Pass and Fushui Pass are the way back for our army. We can't be careless. We need to send a general to guard them. Guan Yu took a step forward. His slender red phoenix eyes opened slightly. Elder brother, I request to go and guard Jiaming Pass and meet Ma Chao. Liu Bei said happily, second brother is brave and resourceful. You can handle the heavy responsibility. Liu Bei had a lot of trust in Guan Yu's ability. In the Romance of the Three Kingdoms, Liu Bei lost Pang Tong and didn't have Su Shu by his side. He had no choice but to transfer Zhuge Liang from Jingzhou. At that time, he wanted Guan Yu to replace Zhuge Liang and guard Jingzhou. Su Shu frowned slightly. General Guan, I have something to say. I hope you will remember it. Guan Yu nodded. Please speak, military advisor Su. Su Shu said, although the Yuan army sent Ma Chao to attack the pass, our army's plan to conquer Sichuan cannot be stopped. We will have to divide our forces and fight on two fronts. General Guan can't take many soldiers with you. The most important thing to guard Jiaming Pass is to defend and not fight. You must not give up the geographical advantage. As for going out of the pass and fighting the Yuan army, even a wise man wouldn't do that. Liu Bei nodded. Yuanji's words are reasonable. I will follow your advice. We must not lose our escape route. Guan Yu said emotionally, since a real man has accepted the heavy responsibility, he will not rest until he is dead. Immediately, Guan Yu led 3,000 soldiers and horses to Jiaming Pass to guard it. Su Shu looked worried. After thinking for a while, he said, My lord, we still need to send Generals Kong Ming and Zhang Ida over from Jingzhou. Jingzhou is also an important place. Our army has already brought all the civil and military generals we can on this trip to Sichuan. We only left military advisor Zhuge and third brother to guard Jingzhou. If we send them over, it will be tantamount to giving up on Jingzhou. Liu Bei said. Su Shu said, My lord's concern is that Yuan Shi and Sun Tzu might seize the opportunity to attack the 5 counties of Jingzhou. But I speculate that since Yuan Shi's banner is from Hefei, then Yuan Shi and Sun Tzu will definitely fight. If the two sides fight, no one will have the time to attack Jingzhou. Therefore, although Jingzhou looks dangerous, it is actually as stable as Mount Tai. After thinking about it, Liu Bei accepted Su Shu's suggestion and sent a letter to Jingzhou. However, in the letter, he still asked Zhuge Liang to judge whether they should enter Sichuan based on the situation in Hefei. Chapter 1338. Jiaming Pass. Hearing that Guan Yu had come, the generals under Bai Xiaowen were all worried. Guan Yu was much more famous than Hu Jun. Jiaming Pass was so dangerous, and they had Guan Yu as a strong ally. How are they going to pass? When Bai Xiaowen heard the news, he laughed out loud. Originally, I thought that it would take a few more days for me to break through. Now that Guan Yu is here, it's as good as giving me the 2 stages. The generals did not understand what he meant. Bai Xiaowen said, This matter is confidential and should not be made public. Just listen to my orders. He then called Ma Chao over and whispered a few words to him. Ma Chao frowned slightly. When Bai Xiaowen saw this, he said, Meng Qi, have you forgotten about old General Ma Teng? Now that your enemy is right in front of you, let's see if you care more about your reputation or if you want to take revenge. Ma Chao's body shook slightly. He lowered his head and said, "Of course, revenge is more important. Duke of Yan, don't worry. I will follow your orders." The next day, Ma Chao led the troops over. The flag on the city gate tower had changed from Lieutenant General Hu Jun to Marquis of Hans Ho Ting, Guan Yunchan. The Yuan army below the city gate looked up at the city gate tower. Guan Yu was 9 feet tall, his beard was 2 feet long, his face was red, and his body was strong. Behind him, Zhou Tsang held the green dragon crescent blade, which gave off a cold light. Bai Xiaowen received a notification from the spiritual world. Guan Yu's battle skill, Deterrence, has been activated. Deterrence, passive. Guan Yu's prestige will lower the enemy's morale by 10 points. Every time Guan Yu kills an enemy general, the enemy's morale will be lowered by 3 to 10 points. Activating deterrence will cause all enemies within a large area to enter a slow state. Their attack speed and movement speed will be lowered by 15 to 50% for 60 seconds. The lower the level of the skill, the greater the reduction. Every time Guan Yu kills an enemy general, the duration will be extended by 20 seconds. Bai Xiaowen felt a chill run down his spine. In the previous Three Kingdoms world, Guan Yu, who was only level 5, did not have such a powerful deterrence skill. However, now that Guan Yu was level 9, the skill had evolved and was no longer static. Bai Xiaowen casually used Insight on Guan Yu. Guan Yu, Lord level 9, race, humanoid/human, class, Heavy Blade Lord, attributes, Strength 130 plus 10, Agility 72 plus 10, Constitution 91 plus 10, Spirit 52 plus 10, Lord skill, Heavy Blade, passive. Guan Yu ignores 40% of the enemy's armor. The first attack on the target ignores the opponent's defense, including but not limited to parries and blocks. Guan Yu's horizontal sweep has a cleave effect. Unparalleled skill, absolute kill, Guan Yu marks an enemy. When charging towards the target, he receives an overall bonus in attack power, critical hit rate, and critical hit damage. The faster the movement speed, riding, the higher the bonus. Attack power can be stacked up to 200%, critical hit rate can be stacked up to 100%, and critical hit damage can be stacked up to 400%. The bonus effect will disappear after Guan Yu attacks the target for the first time. Skill 1, Deterrence, omitted. Skill 2, Furious Slash. Guan Yu swings his broadsword in an attempt to kill a target, causing heavy damage to the target. There's also a certain chance of killing the opponent directly. The lower the target's HP, the higher the success rate. Skill 3-5? Skill 6, Warrior Saint. Master Guan Yu receives 1000 extra HP and 50% toughness. All attributes plus 10. All damage received by Guan Yu is reduced by 30%. Skill 7, Oath of the Peach Garden level 3. Guan Yu receives 500 extra HP. After Guan Yu's death, if Liu Bei and Zhang Fei survive, they will enter revenge mode. Guan Yu is stronger than the first time I saw him, Bai Xiaowen said after sharing the information. Li Shi said, "Isn't that a waste, the truth? He was only level 5 back then, but now he's almost level 10. Bai Xiaowen shook his head and said, "What I mean is that his strength doesn't increase linearly, but exponentially. With his level 5 strength back then, after reaching level 4, his attributes shouldn't be so high. Also, he has the Warrior Saint skill, which increases all attributes by 10 and greatly increases his survivability." Cecilia asked, "If Guan Yu dies, will Liu Bei and Zhang Fei enter revenge mode? What does this revenge mode mean?" Bai Xiaowen's insight focused on the Oath of the Peach Garden level 3 skill description. Revenge mode, identify the murderer's faction as the enemy. When fighting against the enemy's faction, Liu Bei and Zhang Fei's attributes will increase by 20%. The morale of their subordinates will increase at twice the rate and decrease at half the rate. This mode can be stacked and can last for a maximum of 3 months, or it can last until the murderer dies and ends prematurely. Isn't this revenge mode too powerful? Even Han Su was shocked. After staying in the Three Kingdoms for so long, Han Su had long realized the importance of morale. It was much more important than a person's strength. Bai Xiaowen shook his head slightly. Let's not think about revenge for now. Continue with the original plan. Take down Jiaming Pass and try to capture Guan Yu alive. If we can't capture him, we can't be merciful. Why should we be merciful? Cecilia asked curiously. Even if we trigger Liu Bei's revenge mode, we can deal with it. Can we let Guan Yu go just because we're afraid of Liu Bei's revenge? That's too absurd. Han Su said, Captain, it's definitely not because you're afraid of Liu Bei. Bai Xiaowen sighed. I'm warning myself. Li Shi nodded with a solemn expression. Guan Yu stood on the city gate tower and saw Ma Chao's troops below. He stopped a stone's throw away. Ma Chao, you've been a duke for generations and come from a noble family. Why are you serving under a traitor and invading our borders? My brother and your father, Ma Teng, are both officials who carry imperial edicts. If you still have some loyalty and filial piety in your heart, you should change sides and join my brother's army. We'll work together to restore the Han dynasty. Bai Xiaowen thought to himself that Guan Yu was indeed an educated person. However, Guan Yu probably didn't know that Pang Tong cursed Ma Teng to death. This time, he was bound to kick an iron plate in order to persuade Ma Chao to surrender. When Ma Chao heard this, he pointed his spear at Guan Yu, who was on the city gate tower. He gritted his teeth and cursed, long-bearded traitor. You still have the face to talk about carrying imperial edicts? My father's death must have something to do with your brother, the big-eared thief. Guan Yu was furious. I was trying to persuade you out of goodwill, hoping that you would correct your mistakes. Who knew that you would be so rude? You can't be forgiven. Ma Chao shook his spear and shouted, Long-bearded traitor, come down and die. Guan Yu waved his hand. Bring me the knife. Shou Tsan handed it over. Guan Yu raised the knife and pointed at Ma Chao. When I go down, I'll take your head. Don't even think about escaping. Ma Chao said fiercely, I've been waiting for you. Guan Yu ordered the switch to be switched on. Hu Jun hurriedly knelt and persuaded, Lord, you've been entrusted by the Lord to not switch on the switch to face the enemy. Otherwise, once we lose Jiaming Pass, it'll be too late to regret. Guan Yu said, what's the point of forgiving a single Ma Chao? After I cut off his head and scatter the Yuan army, I'll return to Luocheng to help my brother take Chengdu. How can I wait here for too long? Hu Jun tried to persuade him. Guan Ping persuaded, Father, please calm down. Before you left, Advisor Su advised you to guard the pass and not go out to fight with the Yuan army. Guan Yu thought about Su Shu's words and hesitated. Ma Chao ordered the soldiers to scold him, saying that Guan Yu was as cowardly as a mouse, that Liu Bei was a liar, and that the three brothers were just mountain men. When Guan Yu heard this, his eyes opened slightly. A sharp light flashed in his eyes. He said coldly, I said that I would come out and take Ma Chao's head. How can I go back on my words? Don't worry, I have my plans. I won't let the Yuan army take the pass. Chapter 1339. Guan Yu then made arrangements. I don't need to bring too many troops. I will only bring 500 soldiers to fight Ma Chao. Hu Jun will lead the archers to defend the city. My son can lead 3,000 troops to wait at the gate. After I kill Ma Chao, Hu Jun will beat the drums and march. My son will lead the troops to charge out and win. Hu Jun could not find any flaws in this arrangement, so he could only say, Lord, be careful. Guan Yu rode the green dragon crescent blade and rode the red hare horse to lead 500 soldiers out. These 500 soldiers were also special elite troops and could be considered Guan Yu's prestige. Bai Xiaowen paid attention to Guan Yu. He noticed that Guan Yu, who was riding the red hare horse, had an additional status, Flying General. Flying General, passive. The red hare horse can climb mountains and cross rivers like it is walking on flat ground. Its speed is equivalent to the peak of the awakened realm, 200 points of agility. Its jumping distance is greatly increased. Increases the agility of the mounted general by 12 points. Ignores normal terrain obstacles. The normal terrain obstacles here referred to natural terrain that was full of potholes. If it was a man-made pit, it could not be ignored. At most, it could be discovered in advance and used the red hair horse's leg strength to jump over. Therefore, this flying general's skill was a little different from Zhao Yun's flying horse, which was one of the 4 great buffs of Zhao Yun's solo rider save master. In the Romance of the Three Kingdoms, Zhao Yun was able to jump out of a pit after falling into it, scaring Zhang He into retreating. Li Shi said, "Guan Yu is famous for his horse and blade. He has a lot of advantages. Can Ma Chao deal with him?" Bai Xiaowen smiled. Ma Chao has been a duke for many generations. His weapons and war horses are not bad. Furthermore, Ma Chao is facing Liu Bei's army and has activated the vengeance status. He definitely won't lose to Guan Yu. Ma Chao's vengeance status had appeared on the first day of the challenge. It still increased his strength and agility by 30 points each. Now that it was the 3rd day, the 2 main attributes still had an increase of more than 20 points each. At the same time that Guan Yu led his troops out of the mountain pass, Hu Jun commanded his archers to be ready for battle. Bai Xiaowen's spiritual detection was able to sense that there was an army hidden behind the gate. It seemed that they had made sufficient preparations to prevent the Yuan army from seizing the mountain pass. Bai Xiaowen had expected Guan Yu to fight. In the Romance of the Three Kingdoms, after Liu Bei subdued Ma Chao, Guan Yu had always wanted to compete with Ma Chao. At that time, Guan Yu was still guarding Jingzhou. He specially wrote a letter to come to Sichuan to fight Ma Chao. It was Zhuge Liang who wrote the letter, flattered Guan Yu, and stroked his hair, beard. Guan Yu only got rid of this ridiculous idea after he smoothed it out for him. From Bai Xiaowen's point of view, although Guan Yu's martial prowess was at the peak of the Three Kingdoms, he had a fatal flaw in his personality. He couldn't be considered a qualified commander. Now that Guan Yu was provoked to fight, he was able to get Hu Jun and Guan Ping to make a series of defensive measures. He was quite strategic, but this couldn't cover up his personality weakness. No matter how strict the defensive measures were, it was still better to go into seclusion and not fight. Now, he had undoubtedly given Bai Xiaowen an opportunity to take advantage of. When the 2 generals faced off, they didn't speak and galloped over on their horses. Guan Yu aimed at Ma Chao from afar and activated his ultimate kill mark. The red hair was extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, Guan Yu's attack power doubled. His critical hit rate was maxed out, and his critical hit damage increased by 4 times. With a loud shout, Guan Yu's green dragon crescent blade danced in the air and slashed diagonally at Ma Chao's head. Furious Strike activated. Bai Xiaowen was still a little worried. Guan Yu's strongest move was the first strike. It all depended on whether Ma Chao could block it. However, Ma Chao's Prairie Fire Spear technique was also strong in the early stages and weak in the later stages. It was similar to Guan Yu's. Ma Chao's eyes were wide open. In his vision, Guan Yu's strikes seemed to have sucked all the air from the surroundings, causing his movements to become somewhat sluggish and unsmooth. This kind of soul-shaking might make people unable to muster up the will to resist. Whether it was parrying or blocking, one couldn't block the sharpness of this strike. Ma Chao took a deep breath and suddenly lowered his body, hiding in the stirrups. He chose the most correct solution, which was to dodge. Whoosh! Guan Yu's strike, which was filled with boundless killing intent, almost brushed past Ma Chao's helmet. The dodge was successful. Ma Chao straightened his waist and did not wait for his body to straighten up. The tiger head clear gold spear was as fast as lightning, stabbing towards Guan Yu's chest. Guan Yu snorted. He raised his right arm and used the long handle of the green dragon crescent blade to knock the tip of the spear away. Then, he twirled his arms and used the inertia of the first strike to make another turn. Then, he chopped down again. However, the power of the second strike was much weaker than the first, and Ma Chao was also able to knock it away. The 2 lord-level generals were fighting in front of the pass. The soldiers of the 2 families were watching this unprecedented battle. The normal soldiers could not see the beauty of this battle. Only Guan Ping, Ma Dai, and the other rare Lord-level generals could see the thrill of this battle and were intoxicated by it. The two generals fought for more than 100 rounds, but there was no clear winner. Suddenly, a horse neighed. Ma Chao's horse was tired and pushed him off the horse. Ma Chao was shocked and hurriedly rolled on the ground to open up some distance. He raised his spear and prepared to block Guan Yu's sharp strike. Guan Yu raised his blade high but did not slash down. Instead, he snorted coldly and said, "I'll wait for you here. You can change horses and fight again." Ma Chao got up, his face twitching. However, he did not say anything and led his horse back to his camp. Cecilia lent her horse, White Jade Jing, to Ma Chao. Ma Chao thanked her and mounted White Jade Jing to fight Guan Yu once more. The battle continued until dusk, and the two generals had already fought for more than 200 rounds. However, their bravery and energy were multiplied. Cecilia gave the order to beat the drums. The Yuan army shouted and charged forward. Guan Yu hurriedly ordered 500 soldiers to fight. Guan Ping also led 3,000 troops out of the city to help. Both sides fought in a chaotic battle, and both sides suffered casualties. "Stop!" Ma Chao hollered, his voice like thunder. Guan Yu also shouted to stop. He pointed his blade at Ma Chao and said, "Ma Chao, you can't beat me, so you want to use tricks?" Ma Chao coldly said, "This must be my deputy's idea. It has nothing to do with me. If you don't obey orders and don't manage your subordinates well, how can you still be a general?" Guan Yu's tongue was really sharp. This time, he was in the right again. Ma Chao's face turned red. Ma Chao clenched his fists and gritted his teeth. "Guan Yu, do you dare to fight again?" Guan Yu said, "Why not?" Suddenly, they heard the sound of a gong from Jiaming Pass. It turned out that Huijun was afraid that Guan Yu would lose and had retreated. Guan Ping also advised, "Father, it's late. To guard against the Yuan army's tricks, why don't we return to the pass and fight again tomorrow?" Guan Yu was also worried that the Yuan army would attack Jiaming Pass at night. He stroked his beard and said, "Ma Chao, I'll hang your head on your neck for now. Tomorrow I'll come back for it." Ma Chao hollered, "Tomorrow it is. I'll definitely kill you." Chapter 1340. The two sides agreed to a temporary truce and returned to their camps to rest. Guan Yu ordered Guan Ping and Huijun to patrol the city and prevent the Yuan army from taking over the pass. However, nothing happened that night. The next morning, Ma Chao came to challenge the pass again. Huijun admonished Guan Yu, "Yesterday's battle was enough to show your might. The Yuan army must have some tricks up their sleeves. Please reconsider." Guan Yu glared at him. "I made a promise last night. How can I go back on my word? It makes it seem like I'm afraid of Ma Chao." Then, he ignored Huijun and mounted his horse. He led 500 soldiers to battle, with Guan Ping below and Huijun above to guard the pass. The scenery above Jiaming Pass is completely different from the scenery below. Li Shi sighed in the team channel. "Of course it's different. For long-range troops, it's important to control the high ground." Bai Xiaowen chatted with him and said, "I'll look for an opportunity. Get ready to move." Bai Xiaowen and Li Shi were both wearing the armor of Liu Bei's soldiers. They were currently on the battlements of Jiaming Pass. Huijun was only a few dozen meters away from them. The two of them had taken advantage of last night's battle between Guan Yu and Ma Chao to sneak into Liu Bei's army. Bai Xiaowen's plan was to lure Guan Yu into battle and then use the opportunity to sneak into the pass. The next day, when Ma Chao and Guan Yu fought again, they would use the opportunity to kill Huijun and take over the pass. The feasibility of this plan was actually based on the strength of the awakened ones. Ordinary awakened, even if they were the strongest, would find it difficult to assassinate a general under the watchful eyes of the natives of the Three Kingdoms. For example, Li Shi wanted to cooperate with Bai Xiaowen to assassinate Huijun on the first day, but in the end, they returned empty-handed. Although the Awakened's damage output was high, they didn't have extra HP, damage reduction, and toughness. They were too fragile. the armies of the three kingdoms paid attention to formations. The more people they had, the stronger they would be. If an agility-type awaken were to be surrounded, they would be finished within a minute. The only exception was a special awaken like Bai Xiaowen. He had a large number of summon creatures and could form an army by himself. He also had a large area of control and a single point of control. Together with Li Shi's high explosive power, he could take the head of the enemy's general in the midst of tens of thousands of soldiers. Just as Hu Jun was watching the second round of battle between Guan Yu and Ma Chao below, Bai Xiaowen suddenly stood up and opened his palm. A yellow talisman flew out. The Book of Peace. General, be careful. Two loyal soldiers jumped over and tried to block the talisman. At the same time, Hu Jun retracted his head and dodged backwards. However, under the control of Bai Xiaowen's meditation, the talisman drew an arc and still hit Hu Jun. Bai Xiaowen injected his spiritual power and tried to control Hu Jun. Liu Bei's soldiers shouted and rushed over. Bai Xiaowen waved his hand again and the butcher's huge body appeared beside him. The corrosive poison spread out and the surrounding Liu Bei's soldiers were slowed down. Control failed. Kill him directly. Bai Xiaowen issued a hurried order in the team channel. Then he raised his gun and shot directly at Hu Jun with the activation of deterrence. Li Shi had already changed his set of double daggers and used all his big moves. He jumped in front of Hu Jun with omniscient slash and slashed repeatedly. Each slash triggered the wind rage special effect and automatically slashed again. The surrounding soldiers wanted to help, but they were all affected by Bai Xiaowen's deterrence and were all stunned. Hu Jun was currently in the second stun period of the bewitching talisman. With his priority, he couldn't remove a total of 8 stun from the bewitching talisman. His group control dispelling skill, Inspire, naturally couldn't be activated. When Li Shi's advanced omniscient slash landed, Hu Jun's health was already close to the bottom. Just as he woke up from the stun, Bai Xiaowen finished him off with another shot. A golden treasure chest appeared. At the foot of Jiaoming Pass, Guan Ping, who was helping Guan Yu, also noticed this change and hurriedly gave the order to sound the gong. However, swish 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 swish. A group of summon creatures appeared in front of the door and pulled the rope to retract the drawbridge. Guan Ping couldn't stop them in time and was also locked inside. Intense drum beats sounded out from the Yuan army formation. Zhang He and Ma Dai each led an army and charged out from the side, surrounding Guan Yu and his 500 bladesmen in the middle of the battlefield. Guan Yu was shocked and angry. He shouted, "Ma Chao! You untrustworthy person, I misjudged you." Ma Chao was already mentally prepared. He gritted his teeth and said, "For revenge for my father, I don't care about trifles. Guan Yu, I respect you as a man. Quickly get down from your horse and be bound." Guan Yu said with disdain, "The Yuan army is just a bunch of rats with no guts. What do I have to fear?" The three generals, Zhang He, Ma Chao, and Ma Dai, surrounded Guan Yu and fought. The drums sounded for the second time. Gao Lan and Han Meng led their armies and charged out. They didn't care about Guan Yu and went to kill Guan Yu's 500 soldiers. In the middle of the Yuan army, the Duke of Yan's flag slowly rose. The generals of the Yuan army shouted in unison, "The Duke of Yan will lead the imperial court army to Sichuan. Those who surrender will be spared." When Guan Yu heard this, he also saw the flag from the corner of his eyes. He regretted it and thought to himself, "This time, China has played a dirty trick." Inside Jiaoming Pass, there was also an intense battle. A few seconds after the gate closed, Guan Ping reacted and led his troops to charge toward Bai Xiaowen's summoned creatures. Guan Ping's eyes turned red. When his father was fighting outside, he gave the responsibility of guarding the pass to him and Hu Jun. In the blink of an eye, Hu Jun died, and his father was blocked outside the pass. He was in danger at any time. Guan Ping was like a mad tiger. He didn't ride a horse. Instead, he held a large blade and slashed down. The skeleton warriors and deathbone archers were all knocked away. However, Guan Ping saw someone he shouldn't have seen. A woman with black fog around her body floated in midair. 2 streams of blood flowed under her eyes. Facing Guanping, she opened her sharp claws. Evil woman, use grudge. As a male, Guanping would lose 3 points of mental energy every second for 10 seconds. This was a fatal blow to the strength-type rare rank leader. He didn't dare to use any of his skills. However, Guanping's Spring and Autumn Saber technique, Pseudo, was learned from Guan Yu. This kind of martial art didn't require any mental energy to use, but it was still quite powerful. To him, this was definitely a blessing in disguise. However, in the next moment, a giant wolf covered in armor landed in front of Guanping. It was the Wrath Claw. Bastard, get lost. Guanping shouted angrily. He took a step forward and slashed at the Wrath Claw's neck. The Wrath Claw howled and slapped out with its claws. It accurately hit the side of the large blade, the point where Guanping couldn't easily use his strength. After being blocked, Guanping's heart trembled. He immediately realized that the beast in front of him wasn't ordinary. Its strength, might be slightly weaker than his, but its agility, was far superior. Just now, it had used its strength to deflect the force of the claw. It was much better than the average general. Chapter 1341. The Wrath Claw was holding Guanping back. Bai Xiaowen also received a notification. Sun Yu's special skill, Brilliant Stratagem, has been activated. Attack speed and movement speed of the surprise troops are increased by 15%. Jia Su's special skill, Absolute Stratagem, has been activated. This stratagem is a sneak attack. Success rate increased by 25%. Jia Su's special skill, Absolute Stratagem, has been activated. Chances of killing and capturing enemy generals are increased by 25%. There was also a notification. The morale of Liu Bei's soldiers decreased by 10 points. The morale of Yuan's soldiers increased by 10 points. Bai Xiaowen brought Li Shi and jumped down lightly. They landed in front of Guanping and the Wrath Claw. Guard the door. Don't let Guan Yu in. We'll win for sure, Bai Xiaowen said. This sentence was not said in the team channel, but Guanping heard it clearly. He shouted angrily, "Dream on." Guanping immediately ordered his bodyguards, "Don't worry about me. Go and open the door. Help father in." As bodyguards, the drop in morale was much smaller than other troops. Most of the bodyguards were loyal. When they heard Guanping's order, they shouted and swarmed forward. To be honest, with so many elite bodyguards charging over, it was quite stressful. However, they only saw a small flame burning quietly on Bai Xiaowen's fingertips. After posing for a second, Bai Xiaowen's hand suddenly slammed forward. Giant Serpent Worm. In the narrow terrain inside the pass, the giant serpent worm's flames surged violently. The strong impact and continuous fire damage. After the baptism of flames, everything was charred black. However, this also showed the strength of the native soldiers of the 3 kingdoms. Ordinary soldiers were injured but did not die after taking the giant serpent worm head-on. Elite soldiers lost less than a third of their HP. Bai Xiaowen valued the giant serpent worm's severe burn status the most. However, after this giant serpent worm, the elite soldiers basically resisted the severe injury status. Even a small portion of the ordinary soldiers were not affected by the severe injury status. It is indeed very difficult. In the Ramses Plain, the number of soldiers might be about the same as in the 3 Kingdoms Plain, but the quality was definitely not as good. Bai Xiaowen's gigantic snakehead could basically clear the place. But now, with Bai Xiaowen's spirit attribute of close to 130 points, even a gigantic serpent worm was not enough. This was also due to the fact that the Super Serpent Strike was an ancient martial art move of the Kusanagi sword spirit. Without the enhancement of the skill LV, the damage coefficient was the same when it was at level 1. Now that it was at level 8, the damage coefficient was still the same. The enemy's strength would increase by leaps and bounds, but Bai Xiaowen's mental strength attribute would only increase linearly. Therefore, it seemed that the power of the oversized serpentine python was not enough. If one shot was not enough, then 2 shots would be enough. Bai Xiaowen took a deep breath and injected 10,000 points of spiritual energy into the Kusanagi sword soul. After a temporary charge, the second Kusanagi sword soul was launched. This time, the results were much more obvious. The ordinary soldiers were instantly killed, while the elite soldiers were heavily injured. Li Shi's figure was like a shooting star. Every strike of his sword would kill an elite soldier with low HP. It felt good to pick up scraps, and it felt good to keep picking up scraps. Guan Ping was hit by 2 of the super serpent strikes, but his HP did not decrease by much. It was just that his face was covered in black smoke, and he looked a little embarrassed. Bai Xiaowen guessed that Guan Ping must have some kind of damage reduction skill. It was just that his insight could not detect it. The visual effect of these 2 super serpent strikes was better than its actual effect. The morale of Liu Bei's army dropped even further. Seeing the burnt corpses of their comrades on the ground, Liu Bei's soldiers hesitated and did not dare to move forward. Taking advantage of the gap created by the super serpent strikes, Bai Xiaowen waved his hand and summoned the Death Knights, leading 3 Terror Knights to appear. With the resolution to sacrifice themselves, the 4 Terror Knights activated the Charge Legion. Stepping on the burnt ground, they rushed towards Liu Bei's soldiers. Only Guan Ping was left on the battlefield near the gate. Demon Woman's ghost claws moved, continuously casting evil spirit bewitchment on Guan Ping. Every 3 seconds, a strange illusion would appear in front of Guan Ping's eyes, causing his machete to miss. Although he had a lot of strength, he could not use it. However, the Wrath Claw's attacks landed squarely on his body. Bai Xiaowen switched to the Cold Winter Wand and continuously cast ice shards to reduce Guan Ping's speed. His main goal was to coordinate with the Wrath Claw to increase the Wrath Claw's damage by more than 40%. This should give him a certain amount of strength. In an emergency situation, Bai Xiaowen would not do this. However, the situation had already been decided. As long as they could defend the gate, Guan Yu would not be able to return home. He would definitely be surrounded and beaten to death. Whether Guan Ping died a few minutes earlier or a few minutes later, it did not make much of a difference. Soon, Guan Ping was killed. Another gold treasure chest appeared. The Wrath Claw also gained 1 strength. It's been a long time since I opened a treasure chest. Bai Xiaowen sighed. Last time, Su Chu's water tank only gave him a flawless yellow source crystal. It was really unworthy of a lord treasure chest. However, this could not be helped. If the White Phoenix battle team did not borrow the strength of the natives and surrounded and killed the Lord treasure chest, the value of the treasure chest would be higher. It was a pity that they did not have such an opportunity. Moreover, their current goal was to unify the Great Plains. Subduing a general would give them more benefits than killing one. For example, defeating Ma Chao and Pound and keeping them alive would give them more contribution to unifying the Great Plains than a dark gold treasure chest. Killing these 2 people in the chaos would only give them water tanks. This was because Bai Xiaowen had also done his research. Subduing a general would give him more contribution to unifying the Great Plains than killing the general. Bai Xiaowen could see the battlefield below Jiaming Pass through White Eagle Air's vision. The 500 machete men under Guan Yu's command were indeed the best of the best. They formed a machete formation and caused a lot of damage to the Yuan army that was attacking them. However, their opponents were famous generals like Han Meng and Gao Lan, so it was hard for them to perform. With Han Meng and Gao Lan as the vanguard, the Yuan army forcefully killed the lieutenant leading the soldiers and broke the sword formation. Then, they split the soldiers up and killed them in batches. Guan Yu was entangled by Zhang He, Ma Chao and Ma Dai. Even with the speed of the red hare, he could not escape, let alone lead his soldiers to counterattack. Soon, the soldiers were all killed. Only Guan Yu was left. He was surrounded and killed by many Yuan army generals. Bai Xiaowen summoned a creature to open the gate and ordered Han Meng to lead an army into the pass. When Han Meng received the order, he led his troops into the pass and killed the remaining Liu Bei soldiers, taking over Jiaming Pass. When he saw Bai Xiaowen, Han Meng was full of admiration. He clasped his hands and praised, "Duke of Yan is both intelligent and brave." Even the Jiameng Pass, which was so difficult to conquer, was taken down. Bai Xiaowen waved his hand and said, "General Han, now is not the time to celebrate. Liu Bei's army at Fuyui Pass has not received news of the fall of Jiameng Pass. I order your troops to change into Liu Bei's army armor and use Hu Jun's banner to attack Fuyui Pass." Chapter 1342. Han Meng was a fierce general. He did not think about the details and just accepted the order. Bai Xiaowen shook his head helplessly. "I have not finished speaking. If you want to open Fushui Pass, just the armor and flags might not be enough. I have already used a Dao technique to control one of Hu Jun's trusted lieutenants. With his guidance, you will be able to open the pass." Han Meng touched the back of his helmet, embarrassedly and laughed. "Thank you, Duke of Yan, for giving me this credit. No need to thank me. Go!" Han Meng took off the armor of Liu Bei's soldiers who had died in battle and ordered the 3,000 men to change into them. Then, he brought the traitor lieutenants in charge toward Fushui Pass. Luckily, the peace book was an awakening technique. The target controlled by the heart-bewitching talisman could follow Bai Xiaowen's orders and move freely. If it was the previous talisman switching techniques, Bai Xiaowen would have to personally bring the controlled lieutenants to the city. If the distance was too far, the control would weaken, and the controlled lieutenants might even die. Reality proved that in the Three Kingdoms world, one person's bravery was unable to fight against an army. Furthermore, Ma Chao and Zhang He, who were fighting against Guan Yu, were both lord-level generals. Bai Xiaowen was also not like Cao Cao, who banned the use of arrows because he valued talents. Cecilia's arrows also caused quite a bit of trouble for Guan Yu. In a battle between experts, even a small disadvantage would be magnified. Guan Yu was heavily injured and fell off his horse. The Yuan army soldiers sang a victory song and escorted Guan Yu to Jiameng Pass. At this moment, Jiameng Pass had already changed hands. Bai Xiaowen sat in the main hall, and Guan Yu became a prisoner. The moment he saw Bai Xiaowen, Guan Yu was stunned for a moment. On one hand, he was shocked at how young Yuan she was. On the other hand, he saw a familiar shadow of an old friend in Yuan Shi. Although their appearances were different, their temperaments were very similar. Immediately, Guan Yu tossed this thought aside. That old friend had returned to Nanjiang a few years ago to observe mourning. How could it be this sinister and cunning Yuan Shi in front of him? Both sides ordered Guan Yu to kneel down, but Guan Yu stood upright and unafraid, glaring angrily at them with his slender eyes. He was clearly heavily injured and tied up, but this awe-inspiring aura made the elite soldiers who were escorting him fearful. Bai Xiaowen smiled and said, "There's no need to kneel. Untie him." Zhang He and Ma Chao were standing on the left and right respectively. Hearing this, they were both shocked. Zhang He said, "Duke of Yan, Guan Yu is a fierce tiger. You can't let him go so easily." Bai Xiaowen smiled and said, "Even if it's a fierce tiger, with you two fierce generals capable of subduing tigers, what do I have to fear?" Guan Yu shouted, "Traitor! If you want to kill me, then kill me. Don't say anything more. Put away your patronizing tactics. You want to persuade me to surrender? Wishful thinking." The generals of the Yuan family all had expressions of dissatisfaction. Bai Xiaowen chuckled. "General Guan, I only ordered people to untie you. When did I ever mention the word surrender? To be honest, I have many strategists and fierce generals under my command. I have many soldiers and generals, and I have plenty of provisions. Since the start of the war in Yuzhou, I've stabilized Liaodong, destroyed Zhang Jiao, swallowed Cao Cao, and pacified Shiliang. I've taken over the counties in Hanzhong and seized the 2 passes in Sichuan. Everywhere I've gone, my attacks have been subdued and my battles have been won. If I want to pacify the world, why would I need someone like you, Guan Yunchang?" Guan Yu snorted and said, "You're good at nothing but trickery. How can you convince a hero?" Bai Xiaowen said, "There's a saying in Sun Tzu's Art of War, the art of war is the art of trickery. As a general, if you can't understand this point and focus on using the lives of your soldiers to achieve success, even if you can win, it will only be a Pyrrhic victory and you'll be at a disadvantage. Using trickery to win, using the smallest price to seize a city, and still being able to spare the lives of your soldiers. What's wrong with that? Guan Yu remained silent. Bai Xiaowen then rewarded the generals and waved his hand to dismiss them. Zhang Yi said worriedly, the Duke of Yan's body is priceless. You can't take risks so easily. Bai Xiaowen smiled and said, even if Guan Yu was in perfect condition, with the green dragon crescent blade and the red hare horse, he wouldn't be able to do anything to me. General, don't worry. Actually, Bai Xiaowen was bragging a little. If it was the complete Guan Yu, he would still have to avoid him. However, the current Guan Yu was already in a heavily injured state. Even if he wanted to counterattack, he wouldn't be able to pose a threat to Bai Xiaowen. Ma Chao wanted to say something but stopped. Bai Xiaowen had seen through the situation and immediately comforted him, Meng Qi, don't worry. I'll definitely get to the bottom of your father's matter and give you an explanation. Ma Chao could only thank him and then leave with the generals of the Yuan army. After the generals left, Bai Xiaowen ordered the servants to serve wine and food. He then personally untied Guan Yu's ropes and asked, General Guan, do you dare to drink wine? I'm not afraid of death, so why would I be afraid of drinking wine? After Guan Yu said this, he asked doubtfully, you're really not trying to persuade me to surrender? Bai Xiaowen pointed to the sky and said, but if you mention the word surrender, I'll let you go. What do you think? Guan Yu was still on guard. After he was untied, he sat opposite Bai Xiaowen. Just as he picked up the wine bottle, Guan Yu suddenly put it down heavily and said, I understand now. You want to use me to threaten my brother. How treacherous. Bai Xiaowen was speechless. Guan Yu said coldly, I've lost Guan Yu and am too ashamed to face my brother. I won't become a hostage for you to threaten my brother. Yuan Shi, if you want to kill me, just kill me. I won't even frown. Stop, stop. Bai Xiaowen said helplessly, do you really want to die so badly? Guan Yu said proudly, a real man has no joy in life and no fear of death. Bai Xiaowen sighed, I heard that you and Liu Bei and Zhang Fei became sworn brothers at the Peach Garden and swore to live and die together. If you die, won't Liu Bei also slit his own throat? Otherwise, he'll be ridiculed by the world for breaking his oath. Guan Yu said, my brother and third brother will definitely avenge me. Although he said this, Guan Yu was no longer so agitated that he wanted to die. Obviously, Bai Xiaowen's words had some effect. Bai Xiaowen didn't respond to Guan Yu's words. He drank a cup of wine and shook the wine bottle, saying, do you know that when I defeated Cao Cao in Changyuan City, he also drank 3 cups of wine with me before he killed himself? Speaking of which, among all the people in the world, I admire Cao Cao the most. Do you know why? Guan Yu said, I don't know. Bai Xiaowen sighed, Cao Cao was called a national traitor by you, but in fact, he cared about the well-being of the world. He felt that the people had no way of making a living because of the chaotic war between the warlords. Therefore, when he was defeated, he left a will for Cao Pai to surrender and for me to complete the great task of unifying the world. How can such a vision not be admired? Guan Yu's expression was slightly moved, but he still said, you and Cao Cao are jackals of the same tribe. You're both traitors of the Han dynasty, so you naturally sympathize with each other. Bai Xiaowen didn't deny it. He nodded and said, traitor of the Han dynasty, these 2 words are appropriate. However, I will betray the Liu family, but I won't betray the world or the people. You are only loyal to the Liu family and your family. When you raised your troops to fight, did you think about the people of the world? Chapter 1343. Bai Xiaowen thought that what he said was very reasonable. Guan Yu disagreed and shook his head, if the Han dynasty cannot be revived, the world will never be peaceful and the common people will not have a way to live. As the saying goes, if the name is not right, the words will not be right, if the words are not right, the matter will not succeed. You are holding the emperor hostage and stealing power. You want to seize the 400 years of Yan Han. The heroes of the world will not submit to you and the war will never end. Guan Yu said, if you really care about the people, then hand over your military power and ask my brother to assist in the government. You will return the power to the emperor. If you can do this, the remaining Sun family of Jiangdong will not be able to resist the imperial court. The likes of Jiao province's Xia will not be worth mentioning. The world will be unified and the 4 seas will be peaceful. The day will be just around the corner. But it's a pity that you can't do that, because you've raised an army to seize the world for your own selfish reasons. Bai Xiaowen shook his head inwardly. He tried to persuade Guan Yu from the point of view of the common people. It was not a wise decision in itself. The famous generals of the 3 kingdoms valued the Han dynasty's orthodoxy more. The welfare of the common people was also important, but the idea of people first was not as deeply rooted in the hearts of the people as it was in the future. Bai Xiaowen said, if I do as you say and hand over my military power, the emperor will be the first to kill me to prevent future troubles. Guan Yu was silent. Bai Xiaowen continued. After I seize the world, I can still give the emperor face and let him retire. If the emperor obtains power, how can he allow me to live? Even my wife and family will be exterminated. Today, 9 out of 10 of the great Han dynasty is already in my hands. How difficult is it to unify the world? For the sake of the common people, there is no need to return the power to the emperor to win the support of the remaining vassals. Guan Yu snorted heavily, you are dreaming. Although you have seized the central plains in the north, as long as my brother is here, he will not let you usurp the throne. Bai Xiaowen laughed, now that I have taken Dongchuan and Sichuan, Liu Bei can't even take care of himself, how can he stop me? Sooner or later, he will be captured by me. Once the east and west rivers are in our hands, Jingzhou and Jiangdong can be settled in one go. Although Guan Yu didn't say anything, his face was full of disbelief. Bai Xiaowen smiled and said, how about we make a bet? Guan Yu was a little wary. What bet? Bai Xiaowen said, within a month, I will definitely capture Liu Bei alive and seize Sichuan. If I fail, I'll set you free. What do you think? Guan Yu waved his hand and interrupted Bai Xiaowen, even if you can do it, I will never surrender to you. Don't mention this bet again. This Guan Yu was really a stone in the latrine pit, smelly and hard. Bai Xiaowen complained in his heart. Then he said, I don't want you to surrender. I just can't bear to kill you, and I don't want you to help Liu Bei. Even if I can capture Liu Bei alive and seize Sichuan, I won't make any demands of you. Guan Yu waited for Bai Xiaowen to continue. Bai Xiaowen continued, however, I will keep you in Bajong for a month. You can't run away, and you can't secretly help Liu Bei. You can be a bystander. What do you think? Guan Yu was a little confused. He said, why don't you just kill me? What good will it do you to put in so much effort and take such risks? Bai Xiaowen poured the wine and sighed. Yes, it won't do me any good. It's just that I don't want to kill you, and I don't want to kill Liu Bei. However, I must unify this world. At this point, Bai Xiaowen stood up and paced in the hall. Liu Bei is known for his benevolence, and you are also a loyal and righteous man. There aren't many benevolent and righteous men left in this world. If I kill one, there will be one less. Although I am called a Han bandit, I also want to leave behind some backbone for this land. At this moment, Bai Xiaowen's back was facing Guan Yu. If Guan Yu wanted to, he could sneak attack Bai Xiaowen from behind. He was certain that he could capture him as a hostage. However, Guan Yu didn't have any intention of doing so. He looked at Bai Xiaowen's back. A familiar yet strange feeling welled up in his heart. He couldn't help but say, have I met the Duke of Yen before? Well, the way he addressed Guan Yu had changed from you to Duke of Yen. This was a good sign. Bai Xiaowen smiled and said, we have been friends in spirit for a long time. Guan Yu didn't understand, but he still said, since I was captured, I should have died. However, in consideration of my elder brother and third brother's oath at the Peach Garden, we swore to live and die together. I can't leave behind a useful body and hope to repay you in the future. Since the Duke of Yen is confident, I can agree to the bet and ground myself for a month. After receiving Guan Yu's agreement, Bai Xiaowen breathed a sigh of relief. Bai Xiaowen had never thought of subduing Guan Yu. Would a Guan Yu who surrendered still be Guan Yu? Bai Xiaowen set up the banquet and made a deal with Guan Yu. His motive was very simple. He couldn't bear to kill Guan Yu. This didn't mean that he was afraid of Liu Bei and Zhang Fei's vengeance mode. Even if Zhang Fei's attributes increased by 20%, it would only be about the same as Ma Chao's vengeance mode. Liu Bei was leading an army of mourning and seeking revenge. So what if their morale was high? Lu Sun of Dong Yuwu could defeat Liu Bei with a single move. Bai Xiaowen believed that he wasn't inferior to Lu Sun when it came to commanding troops. After all, Guan Yu could be considered half a teacher to Bai Xiaowen and Li Shi. The last time they came to the Three Kingdoms dimension, if it weren't for Guan Yu's guidance, Bai Xiaowen wouldn't have obtained the mutated skill, deterrence, and Li Shi wouldn't have been able to perfectly change his profession to Zephyr Swordsman. It wasn't difficult to kill Guan Yu. What was difficult was the hurdle in his heart. That was why Bai Xiaowen proposed the bet. If Guan Yu rejected the bet, Bai Xiaowen could only kill him to prevent future troubles. However, Guan Yu agreed to the bet. With his arrogant personality and trustworthy character, Bai Xiaowen didn't have to worry. It was still the same saying, a Guan Yu who surrendered wasn't the real Guan Yu. A Guan Yu who broke the bet wasn't the real Guan Yu either. Thus, after Bai Xiaowen invited Guan Yu to a banquet, he ordered people to take him to Bajong for a temporary stay. Bai Xiaowen's subordinates were all shocked. They all tried to persuade Bai Xiaowen to kill Guan Yu. If they wanted to keep Guan Yu alive, they would at least have to lock him up and guard him closely to prevent him from escaping. Bai Xiaowen smiled and shook his head to refuse. To Guan Yu, was there a better chain than loyalty? Although the generals didn't understand Bai Xiaowen's decision to deal with Guan Yu, Bai Xiaowen had established a high enough prestige with all kinds of divine strategies since he started the war. Even if the generals didn't understand, they wouldn't question him too much. At most, they would give some suggestions. Soon, Gao Lan sent someone to deliver the news. There weren't any generals guarding Fushui Pass, so there weren't many defenses. After Liu Bei's trusted lieutenant faked the opening of the gate, Gao Lan led his troops and rushed in. After killing a few lieutenant generals who seemed to be in charge, the rest of Liu Bei's soldiers surrendered. Fushui Pass also fell into Bai Xiaowen's hands. Chapter 1344. Liu Bei was in Luochang, discussing how to defeat Liu Zhang when he suddenly heard the bad news of the defeated army. What? Yuan Shi's banner appeared, Jiaming Pass and Fushui Pass have both fallen? Guan Ping and Huajun died in battle, and we don't know whether Yunchang is dead or alive? Liu Bei was shocked by this shocking news. He was so shocked that he couldn't catch his breath for a long time. After catching his breath, Liu Bei's first sentence was, Yunchang and I are sworn brothers in the Peach Garden, and we will live and die together. Nothing must happen to Yunchang. Su Shu tried to persuade him, My lord, please restrain your grief. I've seen General Guan's physiognomy, and he's not someone who will die young. Now, it's our army's situation that's a bit dangerous. Liu Bei had also been tempered by setbacks. Back then, the three brothers were homeless, and Guan Yu was even captured by Cao Cao as a coolie. What kind of storms and waves hadn't he seen before? Liu Bei immediately calmed down and said, Military advisor, please speak. Su Shu said, Yuan Shi seized Jiaming Pass and Fushui Pass, which is equivalent to cutting off our connection with Jingzhou. Our army is trapped in Sichuan, with Liu Zhang in front and Yuan Shi behind. We're short on provisions, and there's no time for reinforcements. If Liu Zhang and Yuan Shi attack us from the front and back, we won't be able to defend Luochang, and we won't have the support of the people. Although Liu Bei was known for his benevolence, he had just occupied Luochang, so it was normal for him to not have the support of the people of Luochang. When defending the city, there's no need to think about mobilizing the power of the masses. We can only rely on the tens of thousands of Jingzhou soldiers that Liu Bei brought over. Liu Bei also realized the seriousness of the situation. He said, "Then what should we do now?" Su Shu said, "We can only send a capable messenger to sneak into Jingzhou and ask Kong Ming to send reinforcements." Liu Bei said regretfully, "Military advisors said this before, but when I wrote a letter back to Jingzhou, I only asked Kong Ming to make the decision himself. If I knew the situation was this critical, I would have asked Kong Ming to send reinforcements as soon as possible." Wei suggested, "Why don't I lead an army to sneak across Fushui, steal Mianzhu, and force Chengdu? As long as we can seize Chengdu, Yizhou will be in the palm of my lord's hand. It will be too late for Yuan Shi to fight for it." Su Shu shook his head and said, "The current situation is critical and we can't act recklessly. Not to mention whether or not you can break through Mianzhu. Even if you can, how can you break through Chengdu?" Wei Yan said in a low voice, "That Zhang Song can be used as a spy, right? With him opening the city gates, breaking into Chengdu would be a piece of cake. Now that we're in such a predicament, if we don't use any tricks, we can only wait for failure." Liu Bei said, "Wenchang, don't be rude to the military counselor." Although Liu Bei stopped Wei Yan, the generals were still interested in Wei Yan's plan. However, another messenger arrived soon after. This time, it was a letter from Jing province. This must be military counselor Zhuge's reply. Liu Bei hurriedly opened it and read it as if he had found a treasure. After reading it, Liu Bei couldn't help but look up to the sky and pray, "Fortunately, I have Kong Ming. The heavens have not abandoned me." Everyone hurriedly asked what was written in the letter. Liu Bei passed the letter to everyone and said, "After receiving my last letter, military counselor Zhuge observed the sky at night and found that there were many stars in Bajong. One of them was as big as a dipper and was approaching the southwest. Therefore, he deduced that the Yuan army in Hanzhong would make a move. Therefore, military counselor Zhuge has already mobilized his troops and is on the way to Yizhou. There will be good news in 3 days." Hearing this, Su Shu sighed and said, "Kong Ming is thousands of miles away, but he knows the Yuan army's plot like a fire. He is really unpredictable." Liu Bei said, "Yuanji is also very talented. If I want to help the world, I need your wisdom." Su Shu shook his head and said, "My insignificant ability is like the fluorescence of decaying grass. How can it compare to the bright moon in the sky? However, I'm worried about what will happen to Jing province if Kong Ming comes to help us." Liu Bei said in surprise, "Military counselor Zhuge said in the letter that the 5 counties in Jing province have reached a point where they can't bear to give up. However, he already has a plan on how to deal with them. In short, he wants to make the situation as favorable to our army as possible." After Bai Xiaowen seized the 2 passes, he led his army to the south and pressed on toward Luochang. Liu Bei held his ground and didn't come out. At the same time, Bai Xiaowen also received a piece of bad news. Zhuge Liang and Zhang Fei led their army to the west and captured Ba County. They recruited the governor of Ba County, Yan Yan, to surrender. All the passes along the way, big and small, surrendered without a fight. They had already advanced into Yizhou and would kill their way to Luochang in a few days. The generals asked to go to war. They wanted to capture Luochang as soon as possible to prevent Liu Bei and Zhuge Liang from joining forces. Bai Xiaowen looked at the tall and big Luochang and shook his head, saying, "The strength of Liu Bei's army inside Luochang is far greater than that of Jiaming Pass. If our army attacks, even if we can capture Luochang in the end, we will suffer heavy casualties. At that time, we won't have the ability to continue reclaiming the Yangtze River. Instead, we will benefit Luzhan." There was one more thing that Bai Xiaowen didn't say. If they couldn't capture Luochang and the soldiers were tired, Zhuge Liang would attack from the back and attack from the outside. The Yuan army might be defeated. With Zhuge Liang's intelligence, if he set up a few more ambushes. Bai Xiaowen didn't ask Guan Yu to let him go in Huarong Path. Jiaming Pass was the gateway to Hanzhong and Sichuan, but it wasn't the gateway to Jingzhou and Sichuan. Zhuge Liang led his army from Ba County to attack Liu Zhang's army. He didn't need to go through Jiaming Pass or Fushui Pass. Liu Zhang's army was too weak. Why did they surrender at the sight of the passing pass along the way? Of course, there was such a thing in the romance of the Three Kingdoms. The main problem was with Yan Yan. The governor of Ba County had a very high reputation in Ba County. After he was subdued by Zhang Fei, the governor of Ba County personally came out to persuade him to surrender. Now, it wasn't just Zhang Fei, but also Zhuge Liang. It was too easy to recruit Yan Yan. After thinking about it, Bai Xiaowen felt that it was better to use the tactic of encircling the enemy and attacking the reinforcements. Therefore, Bai Xiaowen calculated the speed of Zhuge Liang's army and the distance to Luochang. He then made some arrangements. First, he set up a flag in the camp near Luochang. Only a few soldiers and horses were left there to maintain a battle situation every day. Then, about 150 miles east of Luochang, there was a dangerous place called Gourd Valley. Bai Xiaowen personally led his army and set up an ambush there. Li Shi naturally trusted Bai Xiaowen completely. However, Cecilia was a little curious and asked, "Zhuge Liang is said to be the best military advisor in the world. Will he fall into the ambush like you planned?" Bai Xiaowen said, "If it was just Zhuge Liang alone, of course not. But with Zhang Fei, it might not be so." After pausing for a moment, Bai Xiaowen said, "In the romance of the Three Kingdoms, after Zhuge Liang was recruited by Liu Bei as his military advisor, Guan Yu and Zhang Fei didn't really like him. His reputation in Liu Bei's camp mainly came from burning Baoan Slope and burning Fanqing Vanguard. Now that he doesn't have this chance, it's a problem whether Zhang Fei will submit to him or not." Li Shi said, "Zhang Fei should be more worried about Liu Bei's safety. So, it's possible that he didn't listen to Zhuge Liang's advice and forced his army to march." Chapter 1345. Bai Xiaowen led his troops to lie in ambush for an entire night. When it was almost dawn, there was still no sign of reinforcements from Jingzhou. "Zhuge Liang probably won't come." Bai Xiaowen sat under the yellow parasol and estimated the time before voicing his judgment. "Do you want to wait a little longer? Maybe Zhuge Liang's marching speed is slower than your calculation. I'm not saying that your calculation is inaccurate." Li Shi said with a smile, "After all, the battlefield is constantly changing. Without a strict mathematical model, you can't borrow enough parameters." Bai Xiaowen shook his head and said, "I calculated based on Zhuge Liang's speed of seizing Ba County and the subsequent 50 passes. For someone like Zhuge Liang who likes to fiddle with calculations, he would definitely find the best point of coincidence between the soldiers' stamina, morale, and marching speed. After all, from Zhuge Liang's point of view, Liu Bei's escape route was cut off and he was in danger of being defeated at any time. He definitely wouldn't waste any time on the road. He would only rush to the battlefield as soon as possible while maintaining the soldiers' combat strength and guarding against sneak attacks. I also have the geographical map of the mountains and rivers, so I can see the approximate route Zhuge Liang's Jingzhou army would take to reach Luochang. The terrain during this period is also within my calculations. In this way, the arrival time of Jingzhou's reinforcements can be completely predicted. Now, Jingzhou's reinforcements are 4 hours later than my calculation. There must be a deviation in the strategic prediction." Bai Xiaowen's long speech was clear and clear. Li Shi and Cecilia both nodded in agreement. Cecilia said, "If Zhuge Liang didn't come to save Luochang, where would he appear?" Bai Xiaowen said, "I previously speculated that Zhuge Liang would rush to save Luochang as soon as possible because Zhuge Liang was disturbed by Zhang Fei and had no choice but to make this decision. Since this speculation is invalid, then we have to consider another possibility. Zhuge Liang must have used some method to persuade Zhang Fei to act according to his strategy. This is also very possible because Zhang Fei in the romance of the Three Kingdoms had a rough but meticulous personality. He was also very respectful towards famous people with true abilities. If I were Zhuge Liang, after entering the Yi province battlefield, the best strategic goal would not be to rescue Liu Bei from Luochang, but to go north and attack Fushui Pass and Jiaming Pass. These two passes are very important to Liu Bei. However, to our army, they are even more important than these two passes." Cecilia said, "If we lose these two checkpoints, our communication with Hanzhong will be cut off. We will be like Liu Bei now, a lone army. Bai Xiaowen nodded and praised, that's right. That's why I left Han Su at Jiaming Pass just in case. Wait, can old Han defend against Zhuge Liang? Do you have any misunderstanding about old Han or Zhuge Liang? Li Shi asked. Bai Xiaowen shook his head and unfurled the Raven Messenger scroll. While filling it with spirit energy points, he smiled and said, no, the order I gave old Han was not to guard the pass, but to destroy it. Destroy it? Li Shi's eyes widened. Wait, should we think about it more? After all, we still don't know Zhuge Liang's goal. Actually, there's another way to know Zhuge Liang's army's movements in advance. Bai Xiaowen smiled and took out the mountain river geographical map. The S-grade gold item shone quietly. You want to search for Zhuge Liang? No, you haven't seen him before, Li Shi said. Bai Xiaowen smiled and said, no, I want to search for Zhang Fei. Bai Xiaowen, on the other hand, had seen Zhang Fei before. It was during the previous exploration of the Three Kingdoms. Zhuge Liang couldn't have brought many soldiers from Jingzhou, because Liu Bei had already taken away a large number of Jingzhou's soldiers. Under such circumstances, the cautious Zhuge Liang was unlikely to divide his army. If he let Zhang Fei take away another army, he wouldn't have any generals under his command. Therefore, Zhuge Liang and Zhang Fei were basically together. Bai Xiaowen spent 1,000 spirit energy points and filled it with spirit energy to simulate Zhang Fei's image. Soon, a big red dot appeared on the mountain river geographical map. Jixin. Bai Xiaowen called out the name of the place. Zhang Fei is about 1 day away from Jiaming Pass and Fushui Pass. The verification is correct. You can activate it now. The Raven Messenger flapped its wings and turned into a black stream of light, disappearing into the sky. What should we do now? Should we fight Zhuge Liang and Zhang Fei? Li Shi asked. Bai Xiaowen shook his head. No, we have to defeat Liu Bei first. West of Luocheng, a large area of mountains and farmlands were burned. The villagers who lived in the outskirts of Luocheng were forcibly driven away by the Yuan army and moved to the west bank of Fushui. Liu Zhang's forces on the west bank of Fushui were puzzled when they saw this. However, there were still people who understood. Fa Jing met Liu Zhang and said, I'm here to congratulate you, my lord. Liu Zhang frowned. War and disaster. With so many refugees being driven across the river, I'm already heartbroken. Where did the joy come from? Fa Jing didn't care whether Liu Zhang was faking it or not. He said seriously, my lord, do you know the Duke of Yan's intentions? Liu Zhang shook his head. Fa Jing said, the Duke of Yan burned the valley and drove the people of Zitong to move to the west of Fushui. In this way, Liu Bei's army will have no supplies, no grain, and no grain to use. It will be difficult for them to last long. Our army only needs to be separated by Fushui and avoid battle. Liu Bei's army will be gone in less than 100 days. At that time, my lord only needs to order a general to cross the river and assist the Duke of Yan in a pincer attack. Liu Bei will definitely be captured. Liu Zhang was shocked. I've only heard of resisting the enemy's invasion to protect the people. I've never heard of driving the people to leave their homes to resist the enemy. This kind of plan is too vicious. I can't do it. Fa Jing shook his head slightly and said, however, the Duke of Yan has already made the decision for my lord and has taken the blame. My lord only needs to accept the refugees and dig a ditch to avoid battle. This way, you can cooperate with the Duke of Yan and make Liu Bei worry about the city. Why not? Liu Zhang could only nod. That's the only way. Fushui Pass, Jiaming Pass. The head of the Jingzhou army stood in front of the ruins of the two passes. There were 3 people in the lead. The most eye-catching one was 8 feet tall. His face was like jade. He wore a silk headband and a crane cloak. He held a feather fan and looked like a celestial being. It was Zhuge Liang. Nearby stood a woman in black. Her hair was tied up with a wooden hairpin. She didn't wear any makeup. Her face was covered with a black veil, only revealing her eyes. This was Zhuge Liang's wife, female General Huang Yueying. A little further away, there was another fierce general. He was 8 feet tall, had a leopard head, round eyes, and a beard, but his skin was slightly darker. It was Zhang Fei. The damn Yuan army, they don't even dare to fight a battle. They just burned the passes and left. What kind of plan is that? They let me get 2 passes for nothing. Zhang Fei scolded. Zhuge Liang sighed. Ida, this is not a good thing. Chapter 1346. Zhang Fei stared and said, "Didn't you say that as long as we take Fushui Pass and Jiaoming Pass, we would have won half the battle? Why are you lying to me now?" Zhuge Liang said, "My original plan was to take the 2 passes that were still intact. This way, we would only need to send a few thousand elite soldiers to defend the pass and block the Yuan reinforcements from Hanzhong out of Yizhou. Who would have thought that Yuan Shi would actually be so decisive, demolishing and burning down these 2 passes?" Huang Yueying frowned and said, "Normally, a commander would defend the pass to the death. After all, there are mountains and rivers." Zhuge Liang said, "Although the pass is dangerous, we have the mechanical beasts that you made. Breaking the gate is not difficult." Helplessly, Yuan Shi seemed to have a good understanding of our army, so he decided to tear down the pass and split up. From this, we can see that Yuan Shi was not lucky to have such a big name in the Central Plains. Zhang Fei said, "Both sides don't want these 2 passes. It's not impossible to have a showdown in Sichuan." Zhuge Liang shook his head. Huang Yueying said, "General Zhang, you don't know. Losing these 2 passes is extremely disadvantageous for us. Because we only have half of Jingzhou as our foundation, these 10,000 soldiers are our last military strength. On the other hand, Yuan's reinforcements will continuously come from Hanzhong to Sichuan." Zhuge Liang said, "Including Yongzhou, there are 14 prefectures in the world. Yuan Shi already has 11. Our army has half a prefecture's strength to contend with Yuan for Sichuan. If we can't defend the pass, the situation will be dangerous." Huang Yueying saw Zhuge Liang frowning and said, "Husband, don't be discouraged. Sun Tzu and Lu are secretly working together. Sun Tzu's troops have left Hefei and half of Yuan's forces are in the Central Plains. Currently, Yuan's forces in Yizhou are less than 50,000. Our army is not at a disadvantage. Yuan Shi doesn't have any heirs and the time he took over Bingzhou is short. The people's hearts are not loyal yet. As long as we can defeat Yuan Shi and capture him before the reinforcements from Hanzhong arrive, the power of the world will be unknown." Zhang Fei said, "Advisor, we should go to Luocheng to save Big Brother. Otherwise, he will fall into Yuan Shi's trap." Zhuge Liang said, "Luocheng has Su Yuanji's counsel, defending the city will not be a problem. We don't need to worry. Furthermore, based on the time that had passed, the reinforcements of the Yuan army should be arriving soon. Even though these 2 passes have been burned down, there's still a natural barrier. Why don't we set up an ambush here and destroy the Yuan clan's reinforcements first, and then we'll head to Luo City after we've temporarily eliminated our worries." Immediately, Zhuge Liang led his troops to set up an ambush behind the mountain ridges on both sides of the ruins of Fushui Pass. Huang Yueying released a wooden bird mechanical beast to scout the enemy's situation. Zhuge Liang ordered Zhang Fei to lie in ambush while he himself stood in the middle of the army with his sword. Zhang Fei asked curiously, "Military advisor, what are you doing?" Zhuge Liang did not have time to pay attention to him, so it was Huang Yueying who explained, "Our army's attack on the 2 passes was originally very secretive, but Yuan Shi's reaction was too fast. Husband believes that Yuan Shi's deep channel technique must have a way to spy on our army's real and false movements. Therefore, he used the praying puppet technique to deceive the heavenly mystery, so that Yuan Shi has no way to spy on us." Zhang Fei's eyes widened as he looked at Zhuge Liang who had disheveled hair. Outside of Luocheng, Yuan army camp. Bai Xiaowen was in the tent, reading the Taiping Sutra with the internal vision technique. Gu Xian was sitting quietly beside him. Suddenly, someone reported, "My lord, Zhang He, Gao Lan, Ma Chao, and Han Meng, the 4 generals, have followed my lord's orders and burned the mountains and farmlands on the east bank of Fushui Pass. They have chased away the people and are here to report the order. Bai Xiaowen nodded and said, "Good. This way, Liu Bei will have to worry about the city and will not be able to defend it for long. As the saying goes, when he is poor, he will think of changes. When he changes, I will come up with a plan to break it." Gu Xian suddenly opened his eyes and exclaimed, "Eh?" Bai Xiaowen asked, "What's wrong, Taoist leader?" Gu Xian said, "I feel that the Yizhou boundary is chaotic and unclear. It seems like there is an expert who has concealed the heavenly mystery. I don't know who did it." Bai Xiaowen frowned and thought for a while. He took out the mountain river geographical map and searched for traces of Zhang Fei again. However, this time, he failed. There was no red dot on the mountain river geographical map. It was as if Zhang Fei did not exist in this world. It seems like the person who concealed the heavenly mystery was Zhuge Liang. Bai Xiaowen said with certainty, Zhuge Liang must have deduced the effects of the mountain river geographical map from various clues. Bai Xiaowen was still very unhappy that Zhuge Liang had sealed his cheat. However, there was nothing he could do. He had not finished reading the Taiping Sutra and had not activated his elemental energy special skill. Luckily, I have more than one cheat. Bai Xiaowen could only comfort himself. Do you think Zhuge Liang will come to rescue Liu Bei after concealing the heavenly mystery? Li Shi asked. Bai Xiaowen shook his head and said, "It has already been confirmed that Zhuge Liang is in charge of the Jingzhou reinforcements. It is not difficult to guess what he will do next." As he spoke, Bai Xiaowen pointed at the mountain river geographical map and said, "Our first batch of 20,000 reinforcements has already been led by Han Yang, referring to Han Su, from Hanzhong to Yizhou. If I were Zhuge Liang, I would definitely set up an ambush at the ruins of Jiaming Pass to defeat the reinforcements and create an advantage before coming to Liu Bei's aid." Not only Cecilia, but even Li Shi did not dare to believe it and asked in the team channel, would Zhuge Liang really do that? After all, Zhuge Liang's wisdom had already reached the acme of perfection. Bai Xiaowen shook his head and said, "I said it is not difficult to guess because Zhuge Liang has too few cards to play. He only has 2 choices, to rescue Luocheng as soon as possible or to ambush the Hanzhong reinforcements. Which choice would bring him more benefits? You don't have to ask to know." Bai Xiaowen continued. When 2 armies are facing off against each other, when the intelligence of both commanders has reached a certain level, both sides' schemes have already been laid out in the open. The role of wisdom has been infinitely reduced. Everyone is still fighting with brute strength. For example, in the Romance of the 3 Kingdoms, Meng De planned to offer the 3 counties of Shanyong to Zhuge Liang during his first northern expedition. Zhuge Liang knew that Sima Yi would definitely rush over to defeat Meng De, but there was nothing he could do. In the end, Sima Yi achieved his strategic goal and became the fuse that led to the failure of the first northern expedition. After pausing for a moment, Bai Xiaowen continued, "It is the same now. If Zhuge Liang gave up on the ambush and rushed over to rescue Luocheng, our reinforcements would arrive one after another and enter the battlefield in Sichuan. Liu Bei's army would definitely lose." Bai Xiaowen released the Raven Messenger and concluded, "You're right. I now ask Old Han to guard against the ambush and set up camp at Jiaming Pass to form an alliance with Zhuge Liang. This way, we can easily deal with Liu Bei and prevent Old Han's 20,000 elite soldiers from being defeated by Zhuge Liang's ambush. In fact, without the Raven Messenger, I can only watch Old Han enter Zhuge Liang's ambush without being able to do anything, just like Zhuge Liang during the first northern expedition. In the end, it was the Divine Court's gift that was powerful." Chapter 1347. Inside Luocheng. Liu Bei raised the tent for a meeting. Jian Yong reported, Yuan Shi sent troops to burn down the valley around Luocheng and drove the people of Zitong of Brazil to the west of Fushui River. Liu Zhan on the west bank is sending troops to dig a ditch. It seems like he's planning to avoid the battle. Su Shu was shocked, "If so, our army is in danger." Liu Bei sighed and shed tears. So many people have lost their homes because of me. It's my fault. Jian Yong said, My lord, this is clearly the traitor Yuan Shi. He's vicious and merciless, harming the people of Brazil. What does it have to do with my lord? My lord, please don't blame yourself for others. Liu Bei stopped crying and said, Yuan Shi's actions show that he's not a benevolent and virtuous lord. Think about the people of the Central Plains being oppressed by Yuan Shi. How can people not be heartbroken? I must defeat the traitor, save the people from the fire and water, and uphold righteousness in the world. Su Shu, Jian Yong, Zhao Yun and the others all bowed and said, We are willing to die for my lord. Liu Bei quickly helped them up and then asked Su Shu, Luocheng has become an isolated city. The valley has been burned down and the army has no resources. Lu Zhang is defending the west of Fushui River. It's difficult for our army to cross the river and break through. What should we do? Su Shu said, I speculate that after Yuan Shi burned down the valley and cut off our army's hope, he'll go to save Fushui Pass and Jiaming Pass to unite with Hanzhong. As long as he can seize these two passes, Yuan Shi will be able to get endless support from Hanzhong, Yongliang and Xizhou. He'll be in an invincible position. Although Luocheng hadn't received any further news from Zhuge Liang, Su Shu believed that Zhuge Liang would be able to seize Jiaming Pass and Fushui Pass. This was his full trust in Zhuge Liang's ability. Liu Bei frowned and said, Kongming and third brother only have 10,000 soldiers at most. Yuan Shi has 50,000 men. If he blocks the military advisor at Fushui Pass and orders the reinforcements from Hanzhong to attack from the front and back, Kongming won't be able to do anything alone. Wei Yan said, Since Luo City is already an isolated city, why don't we abandon it and pursue the Yuan army to support military advisor Zhuge? When the time comes, there will be a decisive battle at the city gates. With the bravery of our generals and strategists, we will definitely win. As for Wei Yan's opinion, Liu Bei and Su Shu placed more importance on it. This was because Wei Yan's suggestion to attack Mianzhu was rejected by the two of them. Looking at the result of seeking stability was to sit and defend the city alone, falling into a strategic passive state. On the contrary, it was better to take a risk at that time, and perhaps fight for a way out. Wei Yan also had his own opinions about this. He once told his bodyguards in private, If you had listened to me earlier, this wouldn't have happened. However, Liu Bei was still tolerant and pretended not to hear it. Su Shu then sent someone to investigate the movements of the Yuan army's camp to see if there were any signs of breaking camp. The 3 waves of scouts all indicated that the flags of the Yuan army camp were still standing, and there was no sign of them leaving the camp. Su Shu personally went out of the city and snuck a few miles away from the Yuan army camp. He climbed high and looked into the distance. After a long time, he returned. After returning, Su Shu said to Liu Bei, My lord, you can follow Wei Wenzhang's plan and abandon Luo City to pursue the Yuan army. Liu Bei was puzzled, but there is no movement in the Yuan army camp. Su Shu said, What is false is true, and what is true is false. Yuan Shi has already led the army to attack Kongming. He was worried that our army would notice, so he set up flags in the camp to pretend that the main force is still there. I saw that the birds in the Yuan army camp didn't fly up, so there must be no one in the camp. This is Yuan Shi's plan to mislead the troops. My lord, don't make a mistake. Liu Bei nodded and thanked him. If it wasn't for the military advisor, I would have fallen into Yuan Shi's trap. Therefore, he ordered to open the city gates and let 30,000 soldiers abandon the city to chase after Yuan Shi and cooperate with Zhuge Liang's reinforcements in a decisive battle. After Han Su received the Raven Messenger's message, he immediately replied, indicating that he understood. After that, Han Su didn't continue to lead the troops forward. Instead, he led the troops to camp in Jixin County and waited for Bai Xiaowen's next order. This kind of long-distance command could only be done by relying on the Raven Messenger's high efficiency to not delay the battle. Zhuge Liang set up an ambush in the ruins of Fushui Pass. For several days, he didn't see any Yuan soldiers from Hanzhong. One night, Zhuge Liang was observing the stars and suddenly said, My lord, why did you abandon Luo City? Huang Yuanying was also surprised. Zhang Fei said, did Big Brother wait too long and come to meet up with our army? Zhuge Liang shook his head and said, Third General, you are underestimating Yuan Shi too much. Yuan Shi still has 50,000 elite troops in Sichuan. If my lord wants to meet up with our army, you must pass through him. Huang Yuanying said, I'm afraid that my lord fell into Yuan Shi's trap and gave up the city. Zhuge Liang said, I'm afraid that's not all. Yuan Shi must have used other methods to force my lord to give up Luo City. Otherwise, with Su Yuanji's talent, he wouldn't have abandoned the city so easily. I just looked at the stars. The star is in the west and Taibai is in the Guanhan border. My lord has more bad luck than good luck. I'm worried that my lord has fallen into an ambush here. Zhang Fei was even more anxious when he heard this. Military advisor, you are wasting time here. Why don't you return to the army to meet Big Brother? We can join forces and fight Yuan Shi again. Zhuge Liang sighed, I originally wanted to set up an ambush here and grab Han Zhong's throat to make room for my lord. However, it seems like my plan has been seen through by the enemy. Now, I can only give up on Sichuan. What? Zhang Fei stared. Zhuge Liang said, now I'm in a dilemma. If I stay here, my lord will inevitably be in danger. If I save my lord, the Hanzhong Yuan army will be able to enter Sichuan unimpeded. No matter how elite our army is, we won't be able to defend against the reinforcements from Hanzhong, Yongliang, and Xizhou. Luckily, Ba Prefecture and the other 56 passes have surrendered to us. After saving my lord, we can retreat to Jingzhou. Huang Yuanying said softly, Husband, haven't the remaining 5 prefectures of Jingzhou been secretly pledged to the Sun family? Zhuge Liang said, my agreement with the Sun family is that they have to break through Hefei first before they can get the remaining 5 prefectures of Jingzhou. The Hefei Yuan army has gathered a lot of fierce generals and strategists. I think it will be difficult for the Sun family to break through. Even if they can break through, our army can temporarily stay in Jingzhou. Now that Yuan Shi is strong, Sun Wu will definitely not take over Jingzhou. At this point, Zhuge Liang sighed, the situation is like this. We can't force it. Huang Yuanying said, Husband, I have a plan. We can set up a flag here and use the mechanical beasts to drive the 8 trigrams formation. Husband, you can create another fog. When the Hanzhong Yuan army sees that our flag is still there, they will definitely not dare to come close. Even if they find that the camp is empty, they will have to go through the 8 trigrams formation and the fog. Zhuge Liang sighed, this plan can only work for a while. The Yuan army should have a technique to quickly transmit information. Once they confirm that there is no ambush here, how can the 8 trigrams formation stop tens of thousands of troops? However, there is no other way now. Chapter 1348. Guanghan Prefecture, south of Guanghan County, Lianyan Plank Road. Bai Xiaowen led the Yuan army to lie in ambush and wait for Liu Bei's army to arrive. During this time, Bai Xiaowen explained the reason to his teammates. In the art of war, it is said that what is fake is real and what is real is fake. However, the theory behind using fake and real depends on the opponent. For example, this time, I am pretending to attack Zhuge Liang. My real goal is to lure Liu Bei out of Luocheng. Now that Liu Bei has Su Shu as his strategist, his intelligence isn't weak. Therefore, I will set up a camp outside of Luocheng and pretend that I haven't left yet to deceive him. Su Shu will see that the camp is empty and will think that my real goal is to attack Zhuge Liang. Naturally, he will persuade Liu Bei to leave Luocheng and rush to Jiaoming Pass. If Su Shu wasn't there, I definitely wouldn't do this. Liu Bei might not be able to see my goal. Wouldn't that be the same as throwing flirtatious glances at a blind man? On the contrary, I will create a huge commotion and move north under Liu Bei's nose to make Liu Bei send troops to help Zhuge Liang. In the end, Bai Xiaowen concluded, in short, Liu Bei will definitely pass by Lianyan Plank Road if he leaves Luocheng. Our army has the advantage in numbers and it is an ambush. It can be said that victory is in our grasp. The only thing to worry about is that Zhuge Liang will rush over to help. However, I also have a backup plan. Seeing that his teammates, Li Shui and Cecilia, didn't believe him, Bai Xiaowen opened up the mountain river geographical map. He couldn't find Zhuge Liang, but Liu Bei could. Bai Xiaowen checked the locations of Liu Bei, Zhao Yun, and Huang Zhong. In the end, he found that the 3 red dots were in a line and were moving toward Lianyan Plank Road. This time, Li Shui and Cecilia could only accept it wholeheartedly. Bai Xiaowen calculated the time and released the Raven Messenger to give orders to Han Su, who was far away in Jixian County, to lead troops into Jiaming Pass. Bai Xiaowen's order was also based on Zhuge Liang's judgment. If Liu Bei was ambushed and Zhuge Liang did not know about it, then he was not worthy of the title of the #1 military advisor of the 3 kingdoms. He was also not worthy of a historical image of being so intelligent that he was close to a demon. According to Bai Xiaowen's speculation, Zhuge Liang would definitely rush over to rescue Liu Bei. Han Su would follow up in time and join the battle. He could also play a role as a fresh force. Liu Bei's army was split into 3 divisions. Huang Zhong and Wei Yan led the vanguard, Liu Bei led Su Shu, Jian Yong, and the others in the middle, and Zhao Yun brought up the rear. Of course, Liu Bei's army only had 30,000 men, and their formation was not too far apart. The vanguard, middle, and back were only 1 to 2 li apart. Standing by Liu Bei's side, Su Shu looked at the terrain in front of them. He saw the cliffs towering high, the peaks protruding, strange cypresses and green apes growing among them. Su Shu was startled. "What kind of place is this?" he asked. A Chuan soldier said, "This place belongs to Guanghan County. In front of us is the Lianyan Plank Road." "Yuanji, is there anything unusual?" Liu Bei asked. "My lord," Su Shu said, "I see that the Lianyan Plank Road's terrain is dangerous. There are mountain ridges on both sides, and the middle passage can only accommodate a few riders side by side. If Yuan's army ambushes us from both sides, our army will definitely be in danger. Yuanxi's real goal should be to attack Kongming's reinforcements and take back the 2 passes," Liu Bei said. "If he wants to lure our army to pursue and then set up an ambush, he wouldn't have set up a deceptive battle formation in the north camp of the Yan city and put up a false flag." Su Shu shook his head and said, "My lord, falsehood and falsehood are the most important principles of military strategy. If our army's reaction is within Yuanxi's calculations, then it is very possible that he is pretending to attack Kongming to lure our army. What can we do?" Liu Bei frowned. Su Shu asked Liu Bei for a map of Sichuan's geography. After looking at it, he said, "We don't have to take this Lianyan Plank Road. Our army can take a detour along the Han River and go through Deyang County." Liu Bei took the map and said with a frown, "If we take this route, we will have to take an extra 300 miles. Su Shu insisted, "My lord, we can't be afraid of trouble. Right now, we have to be cautious." Liu Bei nodded and said, "If that's the case, then let's take a detour. The terrain in the middle of Shu is very dangerous." Therefore, Liu Bei's army passed down the order and changed the front to the rear, preparing to take a detour. Suddenly, there were shouts and the sound of drums. A group of soldiers and horses rushed up from both sides, each holding the banners of Shiliang Ma Chao and Hejian Zhang He, and rushed towards Liu Bei's army. Before the 2 armies clashed, 2 rows of archers on the cliff stood up and shot arrows. Liu Bei's army was in chaos, and their morale dropped slightly. Luckily, only the vanguard of Liu Bei's army, Huang Zhong and Wei Yan, had entered the Lianyan Plank Road. The middle and rear troops were still outside, so they were not completely tricked. Otherwise, their morale would have dropped significantly. As for Ma Chao and Zhang He, they were originally waiting for Liu Bei's army to enter the Plank Road and cut off their retreat. However, they could only act as the vanguard and break the formation of Liu Bei's army. Zhang He had already activated his Lord-level skill, Formation Change. The spearmen under him formed an arrow formation, increasing their attack power and movement speed by 15% as they pierced into Liu Bei's army. Ma Chao was even more efficient. He led the cavalry under him to accelerate halfway and activated his Lord-level skill, charge formation. Thousands of cavalry charged into Liu Bei's army with a terrifying blood-red glow. Huang Zhong and Wei Yan's vanguard troops were naturally attacked by the archers of the Yuan army under the command of Cecilia. They could only defend passively and suffered many casualties. Furthermore, the plank road was narrow, and Liu Bei's soldiers stepped on each other, making it difficult for them to turn around. Liu Bei's army faced the charge of the two Lord-level generals, and it was a mess. Gao Lan, Han Meng, and the other generals appeared and led their troops to kill Liu Bei. The Yuan army really did set up an ambush here. Liu Bei hurriedly pulled out his sword and hollered, "Everyone, fight to the death. There is no way out if you run." A clear light spread out, and many soldiers in Liu Bei's army regained some of their morale. This was Liu Bei's army recovery skill taking effect. Many soldiers relied on Liu Bei's flag to form a formation and try to stop the Yuan army. Following which, Bai Xiaowen's Duke of Yan flag appeared, and Chao Hong led his elite troops to join the battle. Bai Xiaowen's commander's cloak, commanding roar, and Wrath Claw's Heart of the Wolves were all used in one move. Even the precious Yideng's horn was used up by Bai Xiaowen. Now was not the time to be stingy with items. If they took down Liu Bei, Sichuan would be in Bai Xiaowen's hands. More importantly, the Sun-Lu alliance would no longer exist. Bai Xiaowen's psychic power was divided into many parts. He connected Zhang He, Ma Chao, Gao Lan, Han Meng, Chao Hong and the other generals to coordinate the overall situation. He sent them to different directions to attack Liu Bei's army. He wanted to throw Liu Bei's army into disarray. Chapter 1349. Bai Xiaowen used his mental energy to send a message, and it was like he was giving orders to a general. Although it was a chaotic battlefield, it was still effective. The Yuan army coordinated well with each other, and they were like 5 fingers of a hand. In the end, Liu Bei's commanding ability was still not up to par. He relied on the pacifying the army skill to restore the morale of his soldiers. However, it was not of much use. The moment the soldiers gathered, they were scattered by Bai Xiaowen's elite soldiers. Liu Bei said to Su Shu, Jian Yong, and the others, "Lord, the situation is not good. Let's break out. Where there's life, there's hope." Liu Bei did not mention fighting to the death anymore. He ordered his soldiers to get into formation and break out of the encirclement. Bai Xiaowen received a notification. Liu Bei's special skill, Hidden Dragon, has been activated. Hidden Dragon, passive. When Liu Bei escapes, he will not fall from his horse due to injuries. Passive, increase evasion rate by 30%, increase riding speed by 30%, ignore normal obstacles, and immune to all slowing effects. The corner of Bai Xiaowen's eyes twitched. Uncle Liu was indeed a master of escaping. Bai Xiaowen used his mental energy to send a message to his generals: "We must capture Liu Bei, and we must not let his generals and officials go. Anyone who captures Liu Bei's generals and strategists will be heavily rewarded." Ma Chao did not care too much and went straight for Liu Bei. Another person who did not listen was Gao Lan. He wanted to make a contribution, so he led an army and went straight for Liu Bei. Zhang He was more obedient. He led his troops to kill the scattered soldiers and went straight for Su Shu. Su Shu raised his sword and faced him. Su Shu's martial arts were not bad, but as an amateur, he could not beat a professional general. A few times, he was blocked by Zhang He's dense cloud spear technique. Zhang He used his spear to knock against Su Shu's sword, and Su Shu's sword could not be held tightly. Zhang He then raised his spear and struck Su Shu's back, causing him to spit out blood and fall in front of his horse. The bodyguards behind him were like wolves and tigers. They rushed forward and tied Su Shu up. Han Meng was also quite obedient. It was probably because he had already made contributions in capturing Fulhui Pass. He urged his horse forward and aimed at the chubby Jian Yong. Riding side by side, he lifted Jian Yong up with one hand and threw him off the horse. In fact, Jian Yong was the leader who specialized in mental strength. He knew 2 Dao techniques and yin-yang divination. Normally, his combat strength was passable. However, Han Meng was a rare commander-grade general. Both of them were in close combat, so it was reasonable for him to be captured in one round. Ma Chao chased after Liu Bei. Raising his spear he shouted, "Don't run away, big-eared thief." Liu Bei remembered how Pang Tong had cursed Ma Teng to death. He felt guilty, so he pulled back his head and rode his horse forward. Ma Chao chased after him but was blocked by a group of Liu Bei's bodyguards who were not afraid of death. By the time he killed the soldiers, Liu Bei had already fled a long distance away. Gao Lan was more cunning. He led his troops to surround Liu Bei from the side and cut him off from the front. Seeing that Liu Bei only had 2 or 3 horses, Gao Lan was overjoyed. He laughed, "The heavens have given me such a great merit." He patted his horse and brandished his saber as he went straight for Liu Bei. He shouted, "Liu Bei, quickly dismount and be bound." Liu Bei was panicking when a general rushed over and said, "Allow me to fight to the death." "My lord, please leave first." Liu Bei looked and saw that it was his subordinate, Liu Pai, whom he had subdued in Runan. He did not have time to say anything and could only nod his head and gallop away. Gao Lan was stopped by Liu Pai. He shouted angrily and chopped down 2 out of 3 times, cutting Liu Pai off his horse. Seeing that Liu Bei was not far away, he immediately gave chase. Suddenly, he heard a shout, "Don't hurt my lord." Following which, a white figure flashed by. A general wearing a white robe and silver armor rushed over on his horse. Before Gao Lan could react, a cold light was pointed at his throat. How can there be such a fast spear? This was Gao Lan's last thought. He immediately fell off his horse. The one who came was Zhao Yun. He was originally leading the rear of the army. When he heard the shouts and neighs of horses, he knew that the front of the army had encountered an ambush. Zhao Yun did not immediately rush over. Instead, he ordered the rear of the army to get into formation. He also had his deputy general, Chen Dao, lead the army to be on guard. After making all the necessary arrangements, he galloped to the middle of the army to investigate the situation. As soon as he entered the battlefield, he saw Liu Bei being chased by Gao Lan. Zhao Yun immediately activated his single horse Save His Lord State. He galloped over and used his half-sneak attack. He activated his Thunderbolt ability and stabbed Gao Lan to death. When Liu Bei saw Zhao Yun, he let out a long sigh, "If not for Zilong, I would have died." When Zhao Yun saw that Ma Chao was chasing after them, he hurriedly said, "My lord, we cannot stay here for long." Liu Bei was afraid of Ma Chao and immediately urged his horse forward. The horse he was riding, Delu, was also a famous horse. After the Hidden Dragon ability was activated, the horse's riding speed increased by 30%, making it even faster. During the battle, Ma Chao had borrowed Cecilia's famous horse, Bai Yujing. However, he had returned it after the battle. Now, he was riding a good horse. Although he was not slow, he still could not catch up to Liu Bei. Zhao Yun brandished his spear. He was like a ball of light, stabbing out with dozens of cold glints. The soldiers in front of Liu Bei were all killed by his spear. Zhao Yun opened up a path of blood and protected Liu Bei as they rushed out of the battlefield. Bai Xiaowen looked at Zhao Yun's Solo Knight Saves Master status from afar, and then saw him stab Gao Lan to death. He couldn't help but shake his head and sigh. This scene is exactly the same as in the Romance of the Three Kingdoms. It's a pity that Gao Lan didn't manage to escape this calamity even though he's made a lot of contributions after following me. Could it be that the plains of the Three Kingdoms really have a fixed number? Li Shi said softly, "Don't be sad. Liu Bei has escaped. What should we do?" The corners of Bai Xiaowen's mouth curled into a smile. "There's no rush. Liu Bei's defeated army will definitely run along the Han River. He will go north through Dayang County and take a detour of 200 to 300 miles. After this battle, we will go straight to Lianyan Plank Road and block Liu Bei's path. This is much better than chasing after Liu Bei's tail." Li Shi agreed, "Indeed. This way, we can avoid Zhao Yun who has the single horse Save His Lord State." Bai Xiaowen shook his head and said, the current Zhao Yun is indeed not someone who can be stopped by conventional means. However, if I really want to stop him and capture Liu Bei alive, it won't be difficult. It's just that I don't want to do it for the time being. Li Shi did not understand. Bai Xiaowen did not explain further. He ordered the troops to kill the scattered soldiers and not chase after Liu Bei. Ma Chao was not convinced. He was so angry that he threw his helmet to the ground. Wearing only his headscarf, he led his troops and chased after Liu Bei's tail. He swore to capture Liu Bei. Bai Xiaowen frowned slightly and did not care about Ma Chao anymore. Liu Bei's army was killed and scattered. Wei Yan and Huang Zhong, who were in the vanguard, were like turtles in a jar. On the narrow Lianyan plank road, there were bows and crossbows on both sides. Although they were Lord-class fierce generals, they could not escape. Soon, the vanguard army led by Huang Zhong and Wei Yan was either dead or injured. They no longer had the strength to resist. Bai Xiaowen's troops, who were lying in ambush at the Lianyan plank road's entrance, pressed forward. Bai Xiaowen personally led the troops and pressed in through the entrance. Huang Zhong, Wei Yan, and a group of defeated soldiers were trapped in the center of the pit. Chapter 1350. Although Huang Zhong and Wei Yan were both lord-level generals, they were still unable to resist Bai Xiaowen's army. After resisting stubbornly for a period of time, the two generals fell off their horses and were captured. They were then escorted to Bai Xiaowen's central tent. Bai Xiaowen said, "Are you two willing to surrender?" Wei Yan remained silent. Huang Zhong said loudly, "I can break it, but I will not surrender." Bai Xiaowen laughed, "Old General Huang, you used to be the Changsha Governor Han Xian's subordinate. You didn't have much success, and you only followed Liu Bei for a short time. Why are you so loyal to Liu Bei? You don't know that Liu Bei will be my prisoner sooner or later." Huang Zhong said, "Han Xian can't use me because he doesn't know how to judge people." This old man was appointed as the vanguard general under Emperor Lu's command, and was placed in an important position. How could I fail to live up to his kindness? Bai Xiaowen shook his head and said, "You're just a vanguard general. How can you be considered important? In my opinion, old General Huang's civil and military strategies are enough to hold your own." Huang Zhong did not believe him and said, "Don't try to drive a wedge between us. I will not surrender." Bai Xiaowen frowned and said, "Liu Bei will be captured by me in a day, and Jingzhou will be mine. Old General Huang, don't you think about your family?" Huang Zhong's expression changed slightly. Bai Xiaowen ordered his men to take Huang Zhong away and imprison him. Then, he looked at Wei Yan and said, "Are you willing to surrender?" Wei Yan was hesitant. Bai Xiaowen laughed. "I know what you're thinking. You want to establish your career and obtain scholarly honors. If you surrender to Liu Bei, you can conquer cities and have many opportunities to display your talents. However, my army is about to conquer the world, and there are only a few vassals left who refuse to surrender. You can't do anything under my banner. Am I right?" Wei Yan's thoughts were exposed by Bai Xiaowen. He was so shocked that his red face turned pale. It took him a while to recover. Gu Xian said, "Young master, I'm good at judging people. From what I can see, this person has a rebellious streak at the back of his head. After a long time, he will rebel. There is no benefit in subduing him." Wei Yan's face, which had just recovered, turned pale again. Bai Xiaowen said with a smile, "Right now we are in dire need of manpower. Wei Yan is quite brave and powerful, it would be a pity to kill him. Even if he wants to betray me, he has to weigh the pros and cons." With that said, Bai Xiaowen looked directly at Wei Yan and said, "Wei Wenjiang, if you are willing to surrender, I will guarantee you the position of Marquis. If you don't surrender, I will make sure your head is separated from your body. As for how you want to choose, think about it yourself." On one side was fame and fortune, and on the other side was his head. Wei Yan quickly knelt down and surrendered. Bai Xiaowen nodded and said with a smile, "For the time being, I confer you the title of Marquis of Guanyi, General Yamen." After you make a contribution, you'll be given an additional land according to your contribution. Although the title of Marquis of Guanyi was just a title without any real value, Wei Yan was still overjoyed and repeatedly thanked him. Bai Xiaowen then asked Wei Yan, "You and Huang Zhong both came from Changsha County?" Wei Yan quickly said, "Duke of Yan, Huang Zhong is indeed an old general of Changsha County. However, I was originally from Yang. Later on, I joined Jingzhou's Liu Biao and became Changsha's governor Han Xian's disciple. Later on, when Liu Bei took control of Jingzhou, he invited me and Huang Zhong to join his army." Bai Xiaowen secretly smiled. He knew that Wei Yan's words were not true. In the Romance of the Three Kingdoms, Wei Yan wanted to join Liu Bei several times. First, when Liu Bei died of illness and Liu Song took over, Wei Yan killed Xiangyang's gate officer and offered the city to Liu Bei. Later on, he went to Changsha County and killed Governor Han Xian before offering Changsha County to Liu Bei. Therefore, Wei Yan's attitude towards Liu Bei was indescribable. "You are the wind and I am the sand." He was willing to be a bootlicker to the end of the world. Therefore, when Wei Yan said that he was recruited by Liu Bei, it was probably false. Wei Yan was definitely the one who asked for it. Unfortunately, Zhuge Liang didn't like Wei Yan very much. When they met, Zhuge Liang said that Wei Yan had a rebellious bone behind his head and wanted to chop him to pieces. Later, Zhuge Liang had no choice but to pinch his nose and use Wei Yan. But before he died, he even plotted to kill Wei Yan. Bai Xiaowen continued to ask, "Huang Zhong has a family in Jingzhou, right?" Wei Yan nodded and said, "He has a son and a daughter. His son is called Huang Su. He is weak and sickly. I don't know the name of his daughter. However, I heard that she is also a female general who is proficient in archery and horses." Speaking of this, Wei Yan carefully looked at Li Shi and Cecilia. Bai Xiaowen understood. Huang Su was recorded in historical records. However, he died early due to his weak body. Probably because the natives of the spiritual realm had stronger bodies than ordinary people, Huang Su did not die early. As for Huang Zhong's daughter, he had not heard much about her. Most likely, she was a female general based on a fictional game from the Christian era. Bai Xiaowen said, "Although we defeated Liu Bei in this battle, he still managed to escape. I have a plan to intercept Liu Bei. Are you willing to lead the army to fight?" Wei Yan cupped his hands and said, "Since I have surrendered to the Duke of Yan and received great kindness from the Duke of Yan, I will serve the Duke of Yan to the death. Now, the Duke of Yan is my lord. Liu Bei is no longer my lord." Bai Xiaowen nodded slightly and said, "Good. The next battle is imminent. You go and rest. Next, we will intercept Liu Bei. I want to see if you are brave and brave." Wei Yan happily cupped his hands and thanked Zhang Zian. Zhang Zian did not speak. Chao Hong angrily said, "This person is unrighteous. How can the Duke of Yan use him?" Bai Xiaowen smiled and said, "As a lord, one must use people wisely. There are many people in the world who are virtuous but not talented. There are too few who are both virtuous and talented. Therefore, if we want to pacify the world, we must rely on talents. Wei Yan has the ability to break through enemy lines. Although his conduct is not good, I can still use him. I just need to be careful not to get backfired." Chao Hong, Chao Chun and the others looked at each other. "What? Did I say something wrong? If you have any doubts, feel free to ask." Bai Xiaowen paid attention to the emotions of the surrendered generals of the Chao family. Chao Hong cupped his hands and said, "We do not dare. It is just that the words of the Duke of Yan and the late Chao Gong, ahem." Chao Chun coughed. Chao Hong woke up and quickly shut his mouth. Bai Xiaowen laughed and said, "Great minds think alike." He did not care about Chao Hong's slip of the tongue. Chao Hong and Chao Chun knelt down and said, "The Duke of Yan's mind is as vast as the sea." Bai Xiaowen led his troops and crossed the Lianyan Plank Road. He planned to intercept Liu Bei. The conditions for intercepting the enemy were to know the enemy's strategic intentions and also their position. Bai Xiaowen had already fulfilled these two conditions. Liu Bei only had one choice, which was to head to Jiaming Pass and Fushui Pass to meet up with Zhuge Liang's reinforcements. This was his strategic intention. As for the position, with the mountain river geographical map, no matter how Liu Bei changed directions, he would not be able to escape from an ambush. However, Bai Xiaowen also spent a lot of thought on how to choose the ambush location. The reason why he allowed Liu Bei to escape and did not use items such as speed as a crucial asset in war to pursue him was because the possibility of catching up to him was low. On the other hand, Liu Bei was a lone soldier. He still had some value. Chapter 1351. Liu Bei led the 7,000 defeated troops and fled in panic. The 7,000 defeated troops were still in a relatively complete formation. They were mainly led by Zhao Yun and the 10,000 troops at the rear. Zhao Yun ordered the rear troops to get into formation at the beginning of the battle. They were not scattered by the chaotic troops. Behind them, Zhao Yun saw Ma Chao leading the cavalry to chase after them, so he left behind 3,000 spearmen to guard the rear and meet Ma Chao head-on. Although Ma Chao had few troops, Liu Bei did not dare to stop. Who knew if the Yuan army would catch up? He could only escape. Only by escaping to Deyang, crossing the Han River, and meeting up with Zhuge Liang and Zhang Fei could he be at ease. With the defeated troops by his side, Liu Bei's hidden dragon increased his escaping speed. After all, the defeated troops could not keep up with his speed. Liu Bei could not bear to part with the 7,000 soldiers. Otherwise, he would be alone. Even if he could escape quickly, he would be in more danger without an army. For hours later, Liu Bei's troops had fled along the south bank of the Han River for 70 to 80 miles. Behind them, the sound of hooves could be heard. Liu Bei was shocked and thought that the Yuan army had caught up to them. However, when he took a closer look, he saw that the soldiers were carrying the banner of Changshan's Zhao Yun. The one leading them was Zhao Yun. Liu Bei was overjoyed. He went forward to greet him. "Zilong, you've returned safely. This is great news." Zhao Yun dismounted from his horse and cupped his hands in greeting, reporting to my lord, "I have already forced Ma Chao to retreat. The Yuan army's main force has no sign of pursuing us. My task of covering our retreat has already been completed. Therefore, I led the army here." Liu Bei said, "I've long heard that Ma Chao is a brave general of Shiliang. How did you defeat him? Were you injured?" Zhao Yun shook his head. "Ma Chao's martial arts are indeed exquisite. His spear technique is fierce and overbearing. He was almost defeated in the first 20 rounds. However, after 20 rounds, I gradually understood his style and was able to fight evenly. After 50 rounds, I had a slight advantage. Ma Chao's cavalry was also defeated by my spear formation. Perhaps he saw that there was no hope in chasing after me, so he retreated." Liu Bei looked up to the sky and sighed, "If it weren't for Zilong, I would have become a prisoner of the Yuan army today." Zhao Yun hurriedly said, "My lord is blessed. Even without me, you will still be able to survive." In fact, Zhao Yun and Liu Bei didn't know that if Liu Bei didn't run away first and stayed to fight Ma Chao's cavalry, Zhao Yun's single rider to save his lord's status would still be in effect and he wouldn't have to fight so hard. Liu Bei and Zhao Yun led their troops to Deyang County. Liu Bei said, "After crossing the Han River from Deyang Ferry, we will reach Fulhui Pass 300 miles ahead." Zhao Yun also heaved a sigh of relief. "Yes, as long as we meet military advisor Zhuge, he will definitely have a way." Liu Bei was about to lead his men across the river. Suddenly, Zhao Yun said, "My lord, please wait, what happened?" Zhao Yun said, "My lord, Yuan Shi seems to know the whereabouts of our army like the back of his hand. If my lord crosses the river from the nearest Deyang ferry, it might also be within Yuan Shi's calculations. What if he ambushes our army on the other side of the river?" Zhao Yun's words were true. Although Bai Xiaowen had to deal with Wei Yan and Huang Zhong, it wouldn't take much time. Most importantly, Bai Xiaowen could go straight to Lianyan Plank Road and didn't need to take a detour like Liu Bei's defeated army. Of course, he would have enough time to reach the north bank of the Han River and intercept Liu Bei. Liu Bei took out the map of Sichuan that he regarded as a treasure and said, "If we don't cross the river from Dayang County, we can only continue to go east for 150 miles and cross the river at Jianyang County. But this way, the journey will be even longer. There are less than 10,000 soldiers and they are already extremely tired. How can I bear to let them suffer more?" Liu Bei's soldiers all knelt down and said, "We are willing to follow my lord, even if it's dangerous." Liu Bei's eyes turned red. Luckily, he didn't cry this time. If Bai Xiaowen was here, he would definitely receive a notification that Liu Bei's army support skill had been activated and morale increased by 10. Liu Bei had been beaten up by Lu Bu, Cao Cao, and other warlords in the first half of his life. It was indeed not easy for him to maintain a group of people. Thus, Liu Bei abandoned Dayang Ferry and continued to go east for 150 miles and cross the river at Jianyang County. After crossing the Han River, Liu Bei didn't see any ambushes from the Yuan family. Only then did he feel relieved. After entering Jianyang County was not far ahead. Suddenly, the scouts in front reported that a group of soldiers was coming toward them. While Liu Bei was panicking, the following scouts brought back more accurate information. It turned out that the group of soldiers carrying the banner of the 3rd General Zhang Fei were reinforcements. Liu Bei was delighted and hurried over to meet up with Zhang Fei. When brothers met, their eyes were especially red. Of course, the red eyes here weren't the kind of red eyes when enemies met. Zhang Fei knelt on the ground and said with red eyes, "I heard that second brother's life is uncertain and big brother is trapped in Luochang. Luckily, big brother is fine. Thank the heavens." Liu Bei helped Zhang Fei up. His eyes were also wet. "The heavens didn't forsake me, Liu Bei. I don't think second brother will be in any big trouble. The three of us will definitely meet again someday." After talking about their parting, Liu Bei asked, "Third brother, where's advisor Zhuge? Your foolish brother's mind is in a mess right now. I need the military advisor's advice." Zhang Fei said, "He and his wife set up some 8 trigrams formation at Fushui Pass and also used a technique to summon fog to block the Hanzhong reinforcements. Little brother was anxious and argued with the military advisor for a while. He then let me lead the troops and go ahead to save big brother." Liu Bei's expression changed. "Third brother, you are muddle-headed. Advisor Zhuge isn't good at martial arts and his wife isn't a general on the battlefield. They don't have troops to protect them. If Hanzhong's Yuan army enters the pass, won't they be in danger?" Zhang Fei lowered his head and said, "Advisor Zhuge agreed to let me lead the troops." Liu Bei sighed and didn't say anything. Zhao Yan said, "Advisor Zhuge won't let himself be in danger. My lord, you don't have to worry too much." Liu Bei asked Zhang Fei, "Did advisor Zhuge tell you anything when he asked you to come?" Zhang Fei said, "Advisor Zhuge said that Sichuan can no longer be obtained. He asked me to escort big brother back to Jingzhou through Ba County." This. Liu Bei hesitated. Now that Chengdu had Zhang Song and Luocheng had been captured, he really didn't want to give up Sichuan. He didn't know if there would be another good opportunity like this in the future. Zhao Yan also advised, "My lord, we should listen to advisor Zhuge's arrangement and stay alive for the future." Liu Bei sighed and nodded, "That's the only way." Suddenly, the sound of drums sounded like raindrops. Smoke and dust rose from all directions. Liu Bei hurriedly looked around and saw Han Meng from the northeast and Zhang He from the northwest, each leading an army. Duke Yan's banner rose from the southwest. Obviously, Yuan Shi personally led the troops. The only place without a banner in the southeast was the sound of horse hooves. Obviously, there were also troops coming. Chapter 1352. On the southwest side, under the Duke of Yan's banner, Bai Xiaowen rode on his giant wolf and pointed at Liu Bei's army. "I used Liu Bei as bait to hunt. I wanted to shoot a pig, but I accidentally shot a deer. However, this is good. The 3 brothers can be reunited in my prison. Wouldn't it be perfect if it fulfilled the oath of the Peach Garden? Zhang Fei was furious, and he pointed at Bai Xiaowen with his snake spear. Don't even think about leaving. Tell your third grandpa to stab you a few hundred holes. A thunderous roar sounded out, and Bai Xiaowen's troops' morale dropped by 10, and all the generals' stats dropped by 5. Furthermore, all of Zhang Fei's stats received a 15-point boost. Bai Xiaowen received a notification that this was Zhang Fei's Lord skill, Roar. As expected, one person was able to force back Cao Cao's hundreds of thousands of strong generals. The overall weakening effect was quite strong. Luckily, Zhang Fei's Lord skill had a cooldown time. Otherwise, if Zhang Fei were to shout a few more times, he would be able to turn the enemy into a defeated army. That would be too domineering. It was impossible. After Zhang Fei roared, his power increased even more. He spurred the black-maned horse, held the 8 snake spear in his hand, and charged straight toward Bai Xiaowen's main army banner. Bai Xiaowen shook his head and laughed. Following which, the red flags of the army fluttered, and the archers shot out like locusts. Zhang Fei was furious, but he could not charge over. Bai Xiaowen rode on the back of his giant wolf Wrath Claw, and he quickly received a notification from the spiritual world. Your plan, ambush on all sides, has taken effect. Liu Bei and Zhang Fei's morale has dropped by 10. Soldier Yuan's energy has increased by 10. Sun Yu's special skill, Miracle, has been activated. Attack speed and movement speed of the troops have increased by 12%. Jiasu's special skill, Miracle, has been activated. Ambush success rate increased by 25%, success. Chances of killing and capturing the enemy leader increased by 25%. Seeing Liu Bei's army and Zhang Fei's army suddenly being ambushed and in disarray, Bai Xiaowen knew that this battle was in the bag. Liu Bei didn't cross the river at Deyang Ferry. Instead, he crossed the Han River in Jiangyang. This was indeed out of Bai Xiaowen's expectation. He didn't expect that Liu Bei would know how to go deep into the river and avoid the ambush after losing Su Shu. Unfortunately, with the help of the mountain river geographical map, Liu Bei's small reaction was not enough to change the outcome of the battle. Bai Xiaowen led his troops to set up an ambush in Jiangyang. Not only did he intercept Liu Bei, he also brought along Zhang Fei. Although Zhuge Liang was not included, the basic strategic goal was achieved. Looking at the number of troops led by Zhang Fei, he probably brought most of the reinforcements from Jingzhou over. The number of troops left by Zhuge Liang's side was pitiful. Zhuge Liang had at most a few hundred men. No matter how smart he was, without enough support, he wouldn't be able to do much. Looking at the time, Old Han's 20,000 reinforcements should be arriving soon. Weird, why haven't they entered my sensing range? Bai Xiaowen opened up the mountain river geographical map on the back of the Wrath Claw to search for Han Su. In the end, he found that the red dot representing Han Su was still circling around Fushui Pass. This is not good. Bai Xiaowen suddenly thought about Zhuge Liang. At the crucial moment, Zhuge Liang wasn't on the battlefield. What could he do with a few hundred men? There was only one answer, which was to delay Han Su's advance. Normal deceptive tactics wouldn't be able to stop Han Su. This was because Bai Xiaowen had already used the Raven Messenger to send a message to Han Su, telling him to head south in advance. After Han Su received the order, he would carry it out without any hesitation. Even if Zhuge Liang's deceptive flag was in front of him, he would definitely lead his army and charge head-on without hesitation. There was only one explanation for this situation. Zhuge Liang had used an unconventional method to delay Han Su's advance. Bai Xiaowen asked Gu Xian beside him, Taoist priest, is there any Taoist technique that can stop the advance of tens of thousands of troops? Gu Xian was slightly surprised. There are actually people who can do this. Bai Xiaowen asked, is it very difficult? Gu Xian said, this isn't a question of whether it's difficult or not. Generally speaking, the formations of Taoists are only used for self-defense. Trapping a few people or dozens of people is already the limit. If a cultivator is going to stop an army of tens of thousands of soldiers with a formation, then his attainment in the Tao of formations has already reached the pinnacle of perfection. After a pause, Guxian continued, just like Zhang Jiao. Zhang Jiao turned the secret incantation used by Taoists for self-defense into a large-scale spell to increase the army's combat effectiveness. This method is a kind of innovation, and it's also unimaginable for ordinary Taoists. Bai Xiaowen nodded and said, "It seems that the army led by Han Yang was blocked by this Taoist technique formation in the ruins of Fushui Pass." Guxian stroked his beard and said, "I didn't expect that someone could really do this. But why didn't such a person with such a profound cultivation base concentrate on cultivating the Tao and ascend as soon as possible? Why did he choose to throw himself into this chaotic world? It's bound to consume his Tao and be envied by the heavens, making it difficult for him to live a long life." Bai Xiaowen shook his head and said with a smile, "Taoist priest, in my opinion, the will of the heavens is hard to fathom. For a Taoist cultivator to live in this chaotic world and cultivate in seclusion is a kind of Tao. Practicing medicine and healing people with talisman water is also a kind of Tao. Throwing himself into this chaotic world, unifying the world, and saving thousands of people from the chaos of war is also a kind of Tao. There are 3,000 great Taos, and there is no distinction between good and bad." Guxian was obviously fooled. He nodded and said, "You're right, young master. This poor Taoist's vision was too narrow. It seems that young master has been reading the Taiping Sutra these days and has really comprehended something." Bai Xiaowen was a bit ashamed. It was inevitable that he would feel guilty for fooling an honest person. At the side, Cecilia, Bai Sanyang, said, "It seems that we can't count on Han Yang's reinforcements. With Zhao Yun and Zhang Fei's bravery, coupled with Liu Bei's 20,000 soldiers, although our army has taken the initiative, I'm afraid it won't be easy for us to win. It's bound to be a bitter battle." Bai Xiaowen said with a smile, "No, Han Yang isn't the only one I've prepared. Our reinforcements can only come from Hanzhong, right?" Cecilia asked with a puzzled expression. Bai Xiaowen smiled and opened the Mountain River geographical map to search for Zhangsong. A red dot was slowly moving on the map. It was already close to Jianyang's territory. Bai Xiaowen pointed at Zhangsong's red dot and said with a smile, "When we burned down the farmlands around Luocheng, I secretly sent a messenger to Chengdu to deliver a letter to Zhangsong. After Zhangsong received the letter, he would persuade Liu Bei to send a general to lead the army to cross Fu River and cooperate with our army to pursue Liu Bei. The other backup I've prepared is actually Liu Bei's army." "Is Zhangsong a general?" Li Shiyi, who was famous for his appearance, raised his opinion. "Zhangsong is just following the army. The general is naturally someone else." Bai Xiaowen helplessly rubbed Li Shiyi. At this moment, Bai Xiaowen no longer had the army-level war buffs. The two armies fought fiercely. Although Yuan's army had a certain advantage, Zhao Yun and Zhang Fei were still able to hold on. As time passed, Liu Bei's army gradually recovered from the initial panic. Under the effect of Liu Bei's pacifying the army's morale was maintained at a certain level and did not collapse. At this moment, smoke and dust rose from the south. An army carrying the flag of the Yi province's magistrate entered the battlefield. The leading general raised his sword and reined in his horse. He said loudly, "I'm Lian, a general from Shu. I'm under the orders of Liu Zhang, the Yi province's magistrate, to help the imperial court's army to encircle Liu Bei." Chapter 1353. Liu Bei's army was already struggling to hold on. Now that the enemy had reinforcements, it made things worse. When Bai Xiaowen saw that it was Lian, he was slightly surprised. "It's actually Lian? What's wrong with Lian? I don't think I've heard of him before," Li Shiyi said. Bai Xiaowen said in the teen channel. Lian was a general who excelled in both the pen and the sword. He didn't write much about it in the Romance of the Three Kingdoms. He only had one experience in a general battle. He fought with Huang Zhong for dozens of rounds. When Zhuge Liang took Sichuan, he also said that Lian couldn't be taken by force. When Liu Bei was critically ill, other than Zhuge Liang, he also let Li Yan receive his posthumous edict. He could be considered one of the important officials of Shu Han. It can be seen that he was good at both the pen and the sword. After pausing for a while, Bai Xiaowen said, "What I find strange is that Li Yan wasn't used by Liu Bei until Liu Bei attacked Mianzhu. Then, he was promoted to the position of general. Now, it seems that Li Yan of the Three Kingdoms plain rose to power earlier." Li Yan ordered the Sichuan troops to enter the battlefield. He himself, along with his personal attendant Zhang Song, followed Duke Yan's big banner and the yellow silk parasol cover to see Bai Xiaowen. Bai Xiaowen thanked Zhang Song first. Liu Zhang was willing to send reinforcements because of Yong Yan's, Zhang Song's, advice. Because Li Yan was by his side, Zhang Song could not confide in Bai Xiaowen. He bowed slightly in a reserved manner and said, "This humble one is only advising my lord to go with the flow. Huang Quan, Wan Lei, and the others advised you to sit on the mountain and watch the tigers fight. They are really stupid." Bai Xiaowen nodded and smiled. "Liu Zhang is lucky to have you to advise him." It seemed that Zhang Song wasn't loyal to Liu Zhang and was a traitor. Huang Quan was the true loyal official. Huang Quan suggested sitting on the mountain and watching the tigers fight because he wanted the Yuan army and Liu Bei's army to suffer losses. No matter who won, Liu Zhang would have the ability to expel them and restore his rule over Yizhou. This advice seemed to be loyal to the Lord, but in reality, Bai Xiaowen's victory was already a foregone conclusion. Even if Liu Zhang didn't come to help, at most he would have to pay an additional price. The reinforcements from Hanzhong, Yongliang, and the like would continue to head to Sichuan. With just Liu Zhang alone, how could he fight against the Yuan clan that owned more than half of the world? If he angered Bai Xiaowen, Liu Zhang would not be able to become a rich man, let alone Marquis Sichuan. On the other hand, it was better to express their stance now and support the imperial court's army. That way, they wouldn't lose anything. In the end, they would even be praised by the imperial court and live a carefree life. Bai Xiaowen was not lying when he said, "Liu Zhang is lucky to have listened to Zhang Song's advice." When Li Yan saw the conversation between Bai Xiaowen and Zhang Song, he felt that something was wrong. But now that they were on the battlefield, it wasn't appropriate for him to ask about the details. He could only remember this detail in his heart. Li Yan then greeted Bai Xiaowen, "Duke of Yan, please forgive me for not being able to greet you properly due to my armor." Bai Xiaowen nodded and said, "Don't worry about it. Defeating a thief is a big deal. Some formalities are not worth mentioning. Generally, listen to my orders and fight. After defeating Liu Bei, the imperial court will reward you greatly." When Li Yan heard the hidden meaning in Bai Xiaowen's words, his heart skipped a beat. He cupped his hands and agreed. With the addition of Li Yan's Chuan army, Liu Bei's army could no longer hold on and began to show signs of defeat. The Yuan clan's army fiercely attacked Liu Bei's army. Zhao Yun took a deep breath and entered the single rider to save the Lord's state again. A powerful aura slowly spread out as he inhaled and exhaled. A series of spear shadows, like pear blossoms, brought with them a cold light that could take away lives. Zhao Yun killed a group of Yuan clan's elite soldiers and said loudly, "My lord, we can't do this. Please make a decision quickly." Liu Bei also stopped fighting and said, "Follow the military advisor's instructions and retreat quickly." His special technique, Hidden Dragon, was activated again. Zhang Fei shouted, "Zilong, protect brother and retreat first. Take the land route back to Jingzhou. I'll lead the troops and cover your retreat." With a roar, a cone-shaped sound wave appeared in front of them. In front of Zhang Fei, a large number of Yuan clan soldiers were stunned. Even the elite soldiers' movements were slowed down. Using this opportunity, Zhang Fei stabbed a Yuan clan's deputy general to death with his spear and said, "Scoundrel! Yan clan's Zhang is here. Who wants to fight 300 rounds with me?" Zhang Fei's Lord Tier skill, Roar, was activated again. The morale of the Yuan clan's army dropped by 10 points and the combat power of the generals also dropped. What was more terrifying was that the effect of Roar was stacked with the previous one. Bai Xiaowen shook his head and said, "The bravery of an ignorant man is nothing to be worried about." He immediately stood up and beat the kuei drum. Dong! 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 The powerful sound of the drum dispelled the darkness in the hearts of the Yuan clan soldiers and restored their morale. It also restored the stats of the generals that were lowered by roar. Bai Xiaowen said loudly, "Today is the day to obtain the marquis title. Regardless of life or death, we must take down Liu Bei. Whoever gives us Liu Bei's head will be rewarded with 1,000 gold. Whoever captures Liu Bei will be given the title of marquis." Along with the sound of the kuei drum, the Yuan clan's army broke out into cheers. The soldiers fought for their lives and the generals fought for their lives. The army surrounded Liu Bei's army in the middle. Even though Liu Bei had the hidden dragon skill, under such circumstances, it was hard for him to use it. The number of soldiers protecting him was decreasing. Zhang Ji fought Zhang Fei, and the outcome was still undecided. However, Zhang Fei's troops were slowly being eaten up. Zhao Yun charged forward to protect Liu Bei. He wanted to open up a path of blood just like Lian Yin Zhang Dao. Bai Xiaowen shook his head and took out an item. He pointed it at Zhao Yun. The phantom of a divine beast with the head of a turtle and the tail of a snake suddenly descended. Zhao Yun's jade lion of the night shining jade lion was pressed down to the ground, unable to get up. This was a B-grade gold item from Zhang Jiao's treasure chest, level 4 mighty god sword seal, black tortoise. Although Zhao Yun was strong, he was still an awakened lord. Zhang Jiao was different. His strength had reached a whole new level. This level 4 mighty god sword seal could suppress Zhao Yun's movements. As long as Bai Xiaowen's spirit was still there, he could make Zhao Yun a living target. Li Shui held his daggers and used all his skills. The first part of the invincible slash cut into the battlefield and danced around Zhao Yun like a cicada. Every strike hit a vital point, greatly increasing the critical strike rate. Cecilia knocked an arrow on her bow, and a string of arrows whizzed towards Zhao Yun. Bai Xiaowen opened his hand, and 10 undead bone archers appeared at the best angle in the chaos, and shot out a dense barrage of arrows. This was only the encirclement of the White Phoenix team, and there was also the support of the Yuan clan's generals. For example, Han Meng and the others all joined in the attack. After all, Zhao Yun was an agility-based general. He wasn't a physique-type lord like Su Chu. His defensive ability was mainly reflected in blocking, dodging, and parrying. He did not rely on damage reduction and his robust HP to take the damage head-on. Bai Xiaowen's level 4 mighty god sword seal lasted for 8 seconds. Zhao Yun finally couldn't hold on and was heavily injured. He turned over and fell off his horse. Chapter 1354. He had no choice but to use the 4th stage mighty god sword seal here. After Lu Bu's death, Zhao Yun was basically the #1 general of the 3 kingdoms. It was not a waste to use this precious rank B gold item on him. It was a pity that Bai Xiaowen did not want to take advantage of the situation to kill Zhao Yun. The reason was the same as when he faced Guan Yu. Li Shui did not want to kill Zhao Yun either. After Zhao Yun fell off his horse, Li Shui ordered his soldiers to rush forward and tie him up. When Han Meng and the others saw that Li Shui had taken the credit, they did not attack Zhao Yun anymore. Han Meng and the others did not hate Li Shui. They all knew that Li Shui was Bai Xiaowen's trusted subordinate. It was hard to say what the relationship between the two of them was. Taking a step back, there were 2 other targets who had a higher status than Zhao Yun. Zhang Fei was Liu Bei's sworn brother and Liu Bei was even more so. Without Zhao Yun, Liu Bei could not break through the Yuan army's encirclement. Even if he had the hidden dragon technique, he could not use it if he did not have a way to escape. Liu Bei could only take out his twin swords and kill the enemy himself. It was worth mentioning that his martial strength was not low. He danced with his twin swords on his horse. The Yuan soldiers could not even get close to him. Han Meng went up to Liu Bei but he could not take him down. Liu Bei could not defeat Han Meng. After a feint, he ran away. Wei Yan, who was in front of him, urged his soldiers to intercept him. Liu Bei scolded, "Traitor! How can you face the world?" Wei Yan was ashamed and did not say anything. He abandoned Liu Bei and led his troops to capture Zhang Fei. However, this was Liu Bei's last battle performance. Cecilia shot a sniper arrow and killed Liu Bei's famous horse, Liu. The winged cavalry under her all charged forward and circled around Liu Bei, trapping him in the middle. Liu Bei had no choice but to be restrained. Zhang Fei and Zhang San fought for more than 100 rounds, but it was still difficult to determine the victor. However, as the other generals of the Yuan army came to help, Zhang Fei was also unable to do much on his own. Zhang Fei was a lord with strength as his main strength and vitality as his secondary strength. Agility was his weakness. Being surrounded by so many generals, Zhang Fei could not hold his ground. His HP continuously decreased, and very soon, he was heavily injured. He fell off his horse and was captured by Zhang He's personal soldiers. The other generals and leaders of Liu Bei's army were also captured. Without their commander, Liu Bei's soldiers lost their fighting spirit and knelt down to surrender. Bai Xiaowen issued an order to stop killing indiscriminately and accept the surrendered troops. In the end, other than the fleeing Jingzhou soldiers, Bai Xiaowen also obtained 4,000 to 5,000 Jingzhou soldiers who surrendered. At this point, Liu Bei's army had lost everything. The alliance between the Sun Lu Empire and the Sun Lu Empire had also become a bubble. Bai Xiaowen looked at Liu Bei and Zhang Fei, who were tied up tightly, and felt smug. However, now was not the time to be complacent. Amongst the captured generals, Bai Xiaowen found Ba Prefecture Governor Yan Yan and tried to persuade him to surrender. Yan Yan had a lot of prestige in Ba Prefecture, and he could be considered the main switch along the way. If he could make him surrender, he could save a lot of effort. Yan Yan was not willing to surrender and said, "If I surrender to Liu Bei and then the Yuan family, won't I be laughed at by the world?" Bai Xiaowen said, "If you surrender to me, you will be submitting to the imperial court. I am about to unify the world, and that is the trend. A gentleman knows what to do, so who will laugh at you?" However, Yan Yan still shook his head and said, "I don't have many years left to live. Why don't I just die and leave my name behind?" Bai Xiaowen could only speak with a hint of threat. Even if old general doesn't surrender, most of the 56 passes in Ba Commandery will be on the lookout. Those that resist stubbornly only cause me to waste a little more effort. When the time comes, the entire Ba Prefecture will belong to me. You don't care about the good fortune of your descendants and only think about your name. Isn't that too selfish? This sentence was exactly what Yan Yan wanted to hear. He lowered his head and did not say anything. Bai Xiaowen personally untied Yan Yan and said, "I will not mistreat your family. I hope you will think about it." Yan Yan could only sigh and kneel down to surrender. Bai Xiaowen then conferred him the title of Marquis of Guanyi. Bai Xiaowen called Wei Yan, "In the chaos, I saw you let Liu Bei go. Why did you do that?" Wei Yan lowered his head and did not dare to say anything. Bai Xiaowen said, "You didn't listen to military orders, so you should be beheaded. However, considering that you are a newly surrendered general, it is normal that I can't bear to face your old master. Next, I will give you another order. You must complete it without any hesitation." Wei Yan's spirit was lifted. "I will do anything." Bai Xiaowen said, "Zhuge Liang mobilized the remaining troops of Jingzhou to rescue Liu Bei. Sun Tzu of Jiangdong also gathered most of his troops at Hefei. The 9 prefectures of Jingzhou are empty except for Liu Biao's orphan and widow. It can be said that they are ownerless. I order you to lead 3,000 elite troops to take the land route of Ba Prefecture and attack Xianyang at night. Yan Yan will open the passes along the way for you." This kind of order to enter the enemy's territory alone and obtain great merit was to Wei Yan's liking. He quickly bowed and accepted the order. Someone was unhappy with Wei Yan and advised, "Duke of Yan, Wei Yan is one of the surrendered generals of Jingzhou. It is not appropriate to suddenly give him such an important task without restraint." Someone else said, "If after Wei Yan takes over Jingzhou, he has thoughts of taking over Jingzhou. What should we do?" Everyone's words made Wei Yan's expression change drastically. He quickly pointed to the sky and swore, "I swear that I will take over Jingzhou for the Duke of Yan. If I have any thoughts of taking over Jingzhou, I will die under lightning." Bai Xiaowen nodded and smiled, "I will not doubt the people I use. You may go." After Wei Yan led his troops and left, Bai Xiaowen said to the generals, "A wise man submits to circumstances. Wei Yan is not a short-sighted person. After seeing the might of our army, he should understand the situation of the world. He will not be able to take over Jingzhou and become independent. Even if he does, Wei Yan is not popular and will not be able to defend the city. When our army sweeps through Jingzhou, everyone will submit to us." The reason why Wei Yan was chosen was because of his identity as a surrendered general of Jingzhou. He knew Jingzhou well and would be able to complete the mission of taking over Xianyang in the most efficient way. If it were Zhang He or other generals, they would need to spend at least twice the amount of troops and time. Next, Bai Xiaowen would need to take over Sichuan and make Liu Zhang submit. Naturally, he could not send an army to take over Jingzhou. Letting Wei Yan lead 3,000 troops to carry out this mission was the best choice. Bai Xiaowen then ordered the three armies to be heavily rewarded. Li Yan and Zhang Song, who came to help, were also given the title of Marquis. Li Yan was still hesitating whether to accept it. Zhang Song persuaded him, "With your intelligence, can't you see the destiny of the world? Liu Zhang is already at the end of his days. His life and death are in the hands of the Duke of Yan. If you reject the title of Marquis because of Liu Zhang, wouldn't you be giving up wine for chaff?" Li Yan bowed and thanked him, "Listening to your words is like seeing the clear sky." Thus, he accepted Bai Xiaowen's reward and knelt down to thank him. Bai Xiaowen ordered people to go to the ruins of Fushui Pass to summon Zhuge Liang and receive Han Su's reinforcements. He also sent people to Bajong to bring Guan Yu over. As for Bai Xiaowen, he prepared the army and headed to Chengdu. Chapter 1355. Chengdu. Bai Xiaowen sent an imperial edict in the name of the imperial court. Liu Zhang took the edict. After reading it, he couldn't help but panic. He said, "The Duke of Yan has won a great victory. His troops have already arrived at Luochang. What should I do?" Wang Lei said, "My lord, you can't. This is the Duke of Yan's plan. He wants my lord to leave the city." Huang Quan was silent. Fa Jing said with a smile, "If my lord refuses to go, you will be going against the imperial court. Won't you be abandoning the friendship of sending troops to help you?" Wang Lei said, "I was against sending troops to help from the start. Wouldn't it be best to just sit and watch the Duke of Yan and Liu Bei fight? Even now, abandoning friendship is better than sending yourself to death." Fa Jing said, "When the Sichuan army faced Liu Bei, they lost more than they won. When Liu Bei's army faced the Duke of Yan, they were completely wiped out in less than 10 days. My lord, can the Sichuan army fight against the Duke of Yan's army?" Liu Zhang subconsciously shook his head. Fa Jing said, "If my lord has such a clear understanding, why don't you submit to the imperial court?" Wang Lei objected, "My lord, you can't. Now, west of Fu River, the moat has been dug and the camp has been set up. Our army has the danger of Fu River, it is enough to resist the enemy. The Duke of Yan has already burned the wild valleys around the city. His army has no resources and cannot stay for long. In less than 3 months, they will have to retreat." Fa Jing looked up to the sky and laughed. Liu Zhang played along and asked, "Why are you laughing, Xiao Ji?" Fa Jing said with a smile, "I am laughing at Wang Lei's inexperience and ignorance of the situation. How can the Duke of Yan be compared to Liu Bei's lone army? Not to mention that he is rich in the Central Plains, just Hanzhong alone has enough provisions and soldiers. It can be used as the rear of the Duke of Yan to provide provisions. Wang Lei is vainly trying to use the method to fight against Liu Bei to fight against the Duke of Yan. Isn't that the biggest joke in the world?" These words moved Liu Zhang. He asked the officials for the last time, "What do you think of the public?" Huang Quan, who had been silent all this time, spoke up, I didn't say anything earlier because the situation had reached a point where I had no other choice. The Lord had sent Li Yan and Zhang Song to bring 20,000 troops to assist the Duke of Yan. Most likely, these troops had already been subdued by the Duke of Yan. Since my lord is powerless to resist the Duke of Yan, why don't we go along with the other party's wishes and present the Ezhou household register when the army is being mobilized? We'll win some grace. Wang Lei said angrily, Huang Quan. You can't be completely loyal to your filial piety, but you're advising your master to surrender? I'm ashamed to be associated with people like you. He flicked his sleeves angrily. Huang Quan remained unmoved. He cupped his hands and said to Lu Zhang, the Duke of Yan has never had a bad reputation for killing. Cao Cao's son, Cao Pai, was given the title of Anil Village Marquis. Dongchuan Zhanglu was given the title of Langzhou Marquis. With these two as precedents, I hope that my lord will think carefully about how to choose. No matter what my lord chooses, I will follow by my lord's side. Lu Zhang asked Huang Quan in shock, Li Yan will really side with the Duke of Yan? Before he finished speaking, someone brought over a letter from Zhang Song. Lu Zhang opened it and read it. In the letter, Li Yan and Zhang Song had already submitted to the imperial court and were given the title of Marquis. Zhang Song also advised Lu Zhang to go along with the heavens and submit to the imperial court. Lu Zhang was filled with regret. He said to Huang Quan, I regret not listening to your advice and getting implicated by a vile person. Lu Zhang was also at his wit's end. He cried out loud and brought along the ribbon seal, household register, gold beads, silk, and so on to Luocheng to console the imperial court's army. Bai Xiaowen personally went down the stairs to welcome Lu Zhang. He said, You are truly a hero to be able to go along with the heavens. I will definitely not treat you poorly. I will give you the title of Marquis of Sichuan and give you 10,000 households. You can bring your family and move to Yedu to live there. Lu Zhang could only thank him. Bai Xiaowen led the army across the Fu River and entered Chengdu through Mianzhu. He ordered all the civil and military officials of Chengdu to come and pay him a visit. The power of Bai Xiaowen's super brain was also displayed. All the officials who came to pay him a visit, regardless of their rank, were all mentioned. Bai Xiaowen was able to list their merits and demerits. This was all thanks to Zhang Song, Fa Zheng, and the others' introductions in advance. Those who did well were rewarded and those who did wrong were punished. Overall, the main thing was to encourage them. In less than 3 days, all the civil and military officials of Sichuan had submitted to Bai Xiaowen. Zhang Song said to Fa Jing in private, the Duke of Yan is truly a hero. Not only is he skilled in military strategy, he is also skilled in civil affairs. If Lu Zhang had half the ability of the Duke of Yan, he would be able to protect Yi province and watch the world change. Bai Xiaowen still used the original civil and military officials to govern Sichuan. He appointed Zhang Song as the Yi province magistrate and Fa Jing as the Shu county governor. However, in terms of the military, he still carried out a wave of changes. He appointed a governor in each county to consolidate his rule in Yi province. After Sichuan was pacified, Bai Xiaowen held a banquet to celebrate. This was not because Bai Xiaowen liked to waste time. Holding a banquet to celebrate was an important tradition in the Three Kingdoms plain. The messenger who went to the ruins of Fushui Pass to ask Zhuge Liang to surrender also sent back news. Zhuge Liang and his wife set up the 8 trigrams formation in the ruins of Fushui Pass and stopped Han Su's army for 2 days and 1 night. After Liu Bei and Zhang Fei were captured, Zhuge Liang and his wife went missing. Now, Han Su had led his army out. 20,000 troops were temporarily stationed in Jiangyang. Other than that, the messenger also brought back good news. Pound had recovered from his illness and volunteered to fight. It just so happened that Gao Gan had recruited 10,000 new soldiers and Zhong Kuei had recruited 20,000 new soldiers. Together with the Xiliang soldiers who had surrendered, they were able to select 25,000 elite soldiers. They were handed over to Pound to lead them. After passing through Hanzhong and Yi provinces, they had already arrived at Nanjing and would arrive at Sichuan in just a few days. This was where Bai Xiaowen's advantage was. He held 3/4 of the land in the world, and his war potential was not something that Liu Bei, who only had half of Jingzhou, could compare to. Bai Xiaowen still used the elite troops strategy. The old and weak troops were all sent to farm. If he did not care about the advantages and disadvantages, he would be able to raise 300,000 troops in a month. This was also the reason why Zhuge Liang could not go against him no matter how hard he tried. When the general trend arrived, one could not go against it. At this point, the third stage of the unification main storyline quest was completed and could be submitted. The unification main storyline quest did not have any rewards, so there was nothing to hesitate about. He could just submit it after completing it. This time, he took a total of 32 days to conquer Dongchuan and Sichuan, which was 2 days more than the 30 days he had planned. The war was not too intense. The main reason was that he had to wait for the best opportunity, which was why he spent a lot of time. For example, after conquering Hanzhong, when would he enter Sichuan? This was very particular. If Bai Xiaowen rushed into Sichuan and showed his intention of conquering Sichuan, Liu Bei and Liu Zhang, who had not broken with each other, would be able to stop Bai Xiaowen for a long time. Whether or not he could conquer Sichuan was still unknown. Even if he could, it would take at least twice as long. From this, it could be seen that being the leader of a faction and having a good start did not mean that he could definitely conquer Sichuan. If he was not careful, it would be easy for him to exceed the time limit and fail at the last step. Now that Ezhou had been pacified, the next ones to be dealt with were the three brothers, Liu, Guan, Zhang, and Zhao Yun. You're tuning into the Mythic Realms YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.